Pay attention, it's showtime.
It is indeed showtime. Welcome, 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 everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to a new episode of T3PO Live. Very, very wonderful to have you. Very, well, I would say overjoyed to have you because, man, oh man, I guess, hosting guests utilizing digital platforms hasn't gone so well. I'm not just talking about YouTube, folks. I'm talking about the parks themselves. Apparently, there were some transaction mishaps that were taking place yesterday that, I'm sure upended all kinds of business operations for both the Disneyland and Walt Disney World Resort. But we will get to that in just a moment. Before we get to any of our stories here, I would be remiss to not introduce an amazing panel today. Starting things off, we have Lou Wasserman's Ghost. Let me go ahead and get him on here. Ooh, if I got the button.
We do. Ooh. Ooh.
Yes. Now I will say some of those panelists haven't yet arrived, but that's okay, Lou, because you know what? I just like Hollywood Backlot with Lou and You, which is on every single Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern, by the way. I just love hosting these live shows with you. I think you're a phenomenal.
We could lately rename that show, call it Lou's Childhood Real Estate Adventure. All we seem to do is cruise around my old neighborhoods and give all the gossip on the neighbors. So, but it was fun this time.
Yeah, Lou's. What is it? Lou's Hollywood Backyard or something? Yeah, maybe that could have been the show title. But you know what? Yeah. We cover the gambit, though. We really do. Whether it comes to personal experience with some of these places, or just talking about generally the Hollywood industry itself, the studio itself, the history, everything else. I think it's just a whole lot of fun. So thank you so much for joining me here on T3PO Live.
Where else would I be? It's today at this time, and by God, it's time. Anyway, we're glad to see all of our friendly folks out there.
I would agree with you. We got some amazing people out there, like Ken Reinhardt, for example. thank you so much for joining. I believe that's Coach O Dragon. Very nice to have you right here, Native Hawaiian, everybody. DL Fendel, very much appreciate you being in the chat and joining us today. Now, I will say,
aloha mahalo nui to Native Hawaiian.
There you go. Aloha. Now, I will say, Lou, you talked about where you would be. If you happen to have only a card, maybe you wouldn't be at Disney right now because, well, they suffered a large-scale payment issue processing outage here. This comes from That Park Place. Marvin, always an amazing source in all things Disney. Disney experiencing company-wide payment issues impacting Disney parks and Disney Store. This happening yesterday, September 23rd, 2024. Guests at Walt Disney World and Disneyland, by the way, experienced a rare occurrence this morning when attempting to access the park's mobile apps. Disney wouldn't take their money. Great. An internal technical issue seems to have impacted Disney's online point-of-sale system company-wide, causing issues with online checkout for the Disneyland app, Walt Disney World's My Disney Experience app, and DisneyStore.com. As a result, many guests were left stranded with no way to buy food, enter into restaurants, or otherwise stay hydrated beyond small cups of water. This bit of chaos lasted many hours on September 23rd. Yes, the exact amount is kind of unknown. We know it lasted for at least 3 hours that we can count, but it could have possibly been more. Lou, what is going on with Disney? Not being able to take money? Come on, this is
the equivalent of a giraffe with a sore throat.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
On the other hand, they could have marketed it as a special perk, like if you'll pay us an extra $100 when you come back tomorrow, we'll let you not get charged for things today. So they'll find some way to cash in on it, I guarantee you. But it's got to have cost them, never mind the, as they call it, opportunity cost, or the fact that people who were ready to spend money couldn't. Every time you spend on your credit card, the processing source, which is not Disney, it's the bank that Disney's dealing with, is charging Disney $2, $2.50 per transaction. So we just sat here before we started and figured out that based on the average, hey, we're full number for Disney World, and we're talking the parks, the hotels, the restaurants, the shops, you're talking about $500,000 just there, not counting the deals that were not done because there was no way to pay for it. And if you were getting up in the morning and heard this and said, hey, I'm staying outside the park, I'll stop at a local ATM and get a few $100 cash. Well, that $2 went to somebody else. So,
That's very true. That's very true. The other thing that this impacts is not just Walt Disney World, which has, I think, a maximum occupancy of like 200,000 guests. I don't even remember where I heard that, but I have heard that somewhere. Anyway, you're talking about quite a number of people on Walt Disney World property, all impacted by this, but you're also talking about Disneyland that has probably a maximum theoretical capacity of, 120,000 or so. I'd have to actually look at that a little bit more closely, but between the two parks, you're talking about quite a number of people.
And again, we're talking about all the stores and the hotels and the restaurants in the hotels and the parking lot fee.
But that's the thing, Lou. The Walt Disney World and Disneyland experiences have become so app bound that you're talking about major critical utilities. For example, like Lightning Lane, for example, or I should say major services, or mobile checkout that they employ now in the Emporium and in other places. They've removed cast members that used to man those cashier stands and so forth. And so in terms of the amount of resources that you would need to even facilitate, transactions with cash, I mean, it's the Walt Disney Company, when it comes to their parks, can't pivot on a dime like this.
Well, no, they can't. And for a place that is famous in all the wrong places for being crazy expensive, there's a day where everybody who was there and realized they couldn't spend money was reminded of just how expensive it is when you can. Not a message you want people going home with a smile on their face.
I would agree with you.
Anyway, it's just if something happened in the infrastructure, for example, that on the other side meant that if you bought the Lightning Lane, whatever it's called this week, you got to ride all the good rides twice, or just stay on and ride them around again. That would be a good memory of an AI flaw or a IT flaw. Not this time. Anyway. On the other hand, we know what they'll do. When the numbers come out for how the attendance was this month, they'll claim that it was impacted by this and it isn't realistic, because they are the masters of spin headlines of bad news into something that if you're asleep and aren't paying attention, you might think is good news. So we'll see. We'll see.
Oh, I would very much agree with you. I think there's going to be some spin to this.
This will be the asterisk on the baseball card,
Yes. Yeah, that is. Ooh. I think that's very true. We have Fresh Baked here reporting the stuff on the Disneyland side, but I kind of want to pivot on this story even further and suggest that Disney has a massive IT infrastructural problem. How many times have we heard, by the way, of stuff like the ticket sales and reservation systems disrupted by a big outage? This was November 7th, 2023 by Shannon Ace. Big Disney Genie outage. This was January of this year in 2024. Also, too, Oogie Boogie Bash or any of these big events, especially at the Disneyland Resort, they seem to always be plagued by issues where you can't actually, go through with a transaction because Disney's servers are simply incapable of actually doing that at the time and dealing with a mass demand. Which, by the way, I consider myself somewhat of an IT professional. You can buy server resources and stock up on those resources for these events. Disney, come on, get with the program here. Amazon and many others have services that actually do this for you. But alas, it's just we keep hearing about these outages and these disruptions. And I know the article even mentioned that it was kind of a rare occurrence, but it's not as rare as you would think, and that's alarming.
Well, by the way, I see the folks from the Pro Show have rated us. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for the call out, Theme Park Wizard. It's me, all right. But anyway, and the other thing I mentioned this the other day when we were talking about, actually, I guess it was last night. Yeah. If you had planned on a 5-day vacation at Disney World, and you flew in from, St. Louis, and you have your hotel rooms, and all of that was paid for in advance, so you're not going to find yourself inconvenienced, except one of those days is now empty of what you planned on doing. There is no way for you to call up Delta or anybody else, say, hey, we had this problem. Can we stay an extra day and not have to pay for it? I'm just saying, you've not only been done out of the experience, you've been done out of the reason you took that entire day to be there and all of the ancillary expenses thereof. So even if you live in, Tampa, the gas you used to drive there that day could have been sitting in your tank in your driveway. So
that is so true. I think that's absolutely true. This is going to disrupt I would guess a lot of people's vacations, and the make good by Disney in order to rectify those issues. I mean, that could even put you back even further. And so I think there's a lot of incentive if you're going to move so many of your services. And this includes Lightning Lane, which there's Skip the Line service, or DAS, Disability Access Service, which we will be talking about later on in this show, or mobile checkout. Even, for example, the restaurants on Walt Disney World property, a lot of them have moved towards doing mobile ordering on the app, and so there's not as many windows in which you can actually talk to a cast member about receiving, your food.
Right.
if you're going to move all these services to the app, it's got to be rock solid. And it just hasn't been. And that puts more strain on the cast members and obviously your guests that are looking to, remove themselves from the world around them and escape into the happiest or magical places
Well, and think
on
of
Earth.
think of parallel possibilities. I will grant you that the dollar figure is nowhere near as much per transaction. But what if every McDonald's in America had this happen that day? What if every Publix or food giant or whoever suddenly said, "Oh, well, we can't take any money today unless you got cash." Somehow we don't hear those stories. Somehow they're buying that IT insurance of a kind that you were talking about, or creating backups to backups to backups.
Yeah.
If you start off with an attitude that says stuff happens, things fail, we want to be ready, as opposed to we are the gods of entertainment and therefore it wouldn't dare happen to us.
Yeah.
It's again the story of management that knows how to manage versus management that manages by fiat. So, or Toyota or whatever.
Defunctland, now that I think about it, Defunctland has a great video on the history of FastPass, which I think everybody should actually view because it's a fascinating discussion. That is for sure. But one of those things that is brought up in that video is the transition from FastPass to FastPass Plus and their kind of first foray into providing loads of digital infrastructure for guests resort-wide. And I think included in that confirmed report that I had heard for a while that they went with basically the lowest bidder in order to set up that IT infrastructure for them. And, well, you see, they're still paying for it. Also, too, KitKat says, Knott's is all cashless when their system goes down to mess the park. I would agree with you. The cashless stuff that, Cedar Fair had been doing, I guess maybe Six Flags might join in that with that merger. Yeah, not a big fan of that. That is for sure. Because, like Lou said, things happen and you have to be prepared. You have to have redundancies. But it might be an issue of sheer resources or labor or something else. But if you don't have that backbone, at least, these things get out of hand and quickly. Well,
the old expression, S happens. There's a reason they don't call that fun happens. The S is S, no matter how you look at it, for the customer and for the vendor.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I love that. Samuel Main here with the $5. Very much appreciate it with the super sticker. And it's got a little guy saying, keep it up. Very much appreciate it.
Hey, let's be very clear before we get any further into this.
Yes.
We can take your money, even if Disney can't.
That's a good... I love that. I love that so much. So let's go ahead and get to one of our main stories here. That's on the... It's featured in the thumbnail of this video. We are going to be talking about, has Disney turned the corner, or has the tide turned when it comes to the internal culture of the company? What culture am I talking about? I'm talking about the culture that has allowed activists within the company to flourish. Well, maybe some of those are going away. Maybe the company has taken a new thought process when it comes to those said activists. We talked about this on that part
of their deceit.
That's a good point. I think it's a good discussion.
When you said allowed, they didn't allow, they welcomed. They encouraged. We've all seen that video of those people saying, well, I thought I'd have to hide it, but they told me, no, go ahead, put it in.
Right. Right. That's the famous Not So Secret Gay Agenda video, where the woman in that video details how, she thought she would have to be more covert about it. She had heard rumors and stories about Disney before she arrived, and then when she was welcomed in, well, they allowed her to basically do whatever she wanted, and so she did. But now you have indications that might be changing, and it's very interesting. So we talked about this on That Park Place and how Jennifer Lee had been removed essentially and replaced as the chief creative officer by Jared Bush. Now they're saying, and we covered this I think on Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you as well, Lou.
Yeah.
But this idea that they are, let's say, minimizing her role and so forth, we kind of think that's kind of a cover just to say, hey, look, listen, this is going to just, you are contractually obligated to do these films and to work on this stuff. Okay.
That's why any idea that this is out of some kind of sea change in their attitude is nonsense. You were in charge of one of the major pieces of our company, and you consistently lost money, whether it was because you wanted it all to be animated gay witches, or because you didn't serve good popcorn in the theaters. The reasons aren't the issue. The result is the issue as far as your longevity with the company.
Sure.
So now, will they say, see, we told you we're going to lower the volume? And can they say that? Probably not, because then they would be accused of, turning their back on her or one thing or another. But the bottom line is, this is how you pay people off to go away. You say, well, you were an executive for the company. Now we'll give you, you can finish these 2 that you're involved with. And maybe we'll see in the fine print that she has some kind of a long-term offer of a 3-picture look-see, and that's what happens. So to say that this is an attitudinal or a political sea change, maybe some of them would like you to believe that, both because they'd like to have everybody believe they're doing that when they're not, and because the people inside all know they really aren't. It's the best of both worlds in that regard.
I mean, it's we can't necessarily say that that's not what is happening here. That they are citing reasons publicly that maybe differ from their actual reasons privately. We have to always, assume that until proven otherwise. I will say there's a little bit more evidence for this. So we heard about the Inside Out 2 story in which the internal culture at Pixar pivoted greatly in order to ensure that release coming out Pixar following Lightyear, well, that was not going to have as nearly any gay themes in it, especially involving those with Riley and Val. So that was a big sea change right there. The company paid dearly for that because, well, you had a bunch of crunch that they balanced out with layoffs that we covered last week, actually, when covering the story. Now, the interesting thing about that is that I think Jonas and a couple of others believe that maybe some of those people that were actually let go were maybe the most active when it came to maybe imparting some of those themes. Again, that's our speculation, but using what is it, downsizing as a cover in order to do that, it's a very interesting point. We have heard as well this from That Park Place rumor: Marvel Studios clean house and fired activist producers. This coming out of ultimately Film Threat, Chris Gore there, and he I believe he was on the show recently, at least the pro show, I believe, and kind of doubled down on this point and saying, yeah, look, listen, I know people at Marvel, they are quietly firing all the producers that could be labeled activists. Very interesting claim right there. We know Victoria Alonso is gone. And then you have a story like this. Fired X-Men 97 showrunner Bo DeMeo, claims
by
Disney
the bow of the bay, watching tide roll away.
I always get his name confused there. Fired X-Men 97 showrunner Bo DeMeo claims Disney instructed him to make Magneto and Professor X less gay, even claiming that he wanted a scene in which, this was provided by Marvin, by the way, he wanted a scene in which he was going to be naked and tortured, but then Disney, they wanted him to at least wear briefs, and I would say that was the right call.
It was probably a product placement tie-in with Fruit of the Loom, and I do mean Fruit of the Loom.
Right. Well, they had a what is it? They had a contractual obligation with Hanes, so that's kind of what happens there. No, But
Where
look,
till I
I
get my
mean,
hands on you, as the slogan goes. But
but you
look,
got you got DeMeo, you got Victoria Alonso, you got Pixar, you got Jennifer Lee. Lou, can we officially cite that maybe pendulum is swinging the other way?
well, first of all, I'm surprised that anybody would let this out if that was the officially true reason. Mainly because, as I've said before, lots of people in our forums and our various shows have said, boy, if only an Elon Musk or anybody, the zillionaire, would buy the company, Nelson Peltz, whoever, and kick all these people out and start over. Well, first problem is getting anybody to trust you after the previous people who were phased out for being too conservative or too family oriented were basically had their lives made hell for doing so. But more importantly, you got a lot of lawsuits waiting to happen here. What do you mean you fired me because I was too activist? Right after this video shows you encouraging me to be activist? To quote a famous other legal situation involving differences of opinion, we was just following orders. And if YouTube is listening, that was a Swedish accent. But anyway, or no, Swiss. That way we're neutral and we don't offend anybody.
There you go.
Anyway, but really, how can you say, oh, you didn't like what I did after it was exactly what you told me to do?
It's an interesting thing, Lou. I mean,
it's one thing for DeMeo to say, well, I was partly hired because they wanted diversity. And somebody to say back to him, I don't think your diversity was expected to include the OnlyFans site with you. Broadcasting your chest to the world. So
that definitely could have been a bridge too far, let's say. Whereas some of the other things might be acceptable. Oh, look, you can give reasons for many of these things happening. It's just I find it interesting that at least publicly, outwardly, they are expressing a changing of the tide, maybe because of these specific reasons. Now, obviously, Jennifer Lee and some of the people who were let go at Pixar and so forth, they were removed because
but wait, here Nom de Plume has the perfect example.
Sure.
It says you fired Gina for not doing it enough. Now you're firing me for doing it too much.
Yeah.
I mean, Gina's the obvious alternative example.
Look, here's the thing. When they fired Gina, I mean, they were running on firing all cylinders practically, right? I mean, they were looking at incredible highs, and the only reason why they hadn't achieved even higher heights than when they actually fired Gina was because a lot of their businesses were shut down and starting just to come back online when that actually occurred. But their stock price was super high and everything was going great. And then obviously the stock price has slid, I believe, at least 50% since the time that Gina was let go.
Of course, if we want to talk about stock and the world's greatest excuse since 1929 for economic problems, i.e. the pandemic, if the stock was up on businesses that were doing no business because they were shut down and then came back down once they started doing business again, tells you something about the market's faith in how they were doing business, doesn't it? Something not good. And of course, part of that illusion was that the pent-up demand when everything was shut down was so big that people came back with a vengeance to the parks for their one big, oh God, it's back, I'm so glad trip, before they got home, looked at their credit card receipt and said, well, that was fun, but what about the time I lost in my business or my job? I guess it's going to be a couple of years before we get around to doing that again at these prices. So that falsely made them think, A, we can charge the moon and the stars and people will pay it. And B, it's all going to go on forever, happily ever after like this. And maybe if they were so fooled, and they were, call up their buddies over there who are running the Camp Minnehaha next door to Camp Mini Mickey and say thank you, imperial overlords. So you see what I mean. Anyway.
No. I look. It is very interesting, this kind of pivot here that we've seemingly seen, where Gina Carano is oh man, what happened to her was just incredibly sad, but also too very maddening when you hear about some of the specific allegations as alleged in that lawsuit and so forth. And now we're looking at a company who is like, okay, we can't really have these themes in any of our content, or minimize them to such a degree that it doesn't take away from that content. Is very interesting. Now we do have films like or projects like Agatha All Along, and okay,
you could give it a little more sinister interpretation, Vash, which would be which would be in spite of all of our motion to dismiss stuff, which we know isn't going to fly. We are going to be into discovery with Gina. This stuff is going to come out. It is going to be big trouble. And it is going to happen during the next proxy fight.
Right. Yeah.
And we're certain there's going to be one. So whatever we can do now to say, yeah, but, BlackRock, yeah, but, you big guys, we are fixing it. Honest, we are. Look, we got rid of these people you never heard of before. Some of them. Anyway, yeah.
That's an interesting idea. I never really thought about it like that, but
that's what I've been saying. All of this is in. They are not good at managing big crises when they get into them. Yeah. But once they know they're in them, some people there have to be able to think about, never mind now, what happens 6 months or a year from now? What can we say to our detractors then? And say, look, see, we're already on the case. Keep us in charge. So, I tell you the truth. I know this isn't going to happen. But if I were Ms. Walden or any of these people that are on the short list, I'd say, thanks. Let me get off. I'm really happy doing what I'm doing now. And then the question, which none of us, I don't think, has gone into, is once all the shit hits the fan, if you're Josh tomorrow, not that there are too many jobs like that in the world, do you really want to be there anymore after it's all over and they've officially certified you as not good enough to run the whole show?
Yeah. I mean, it's...
in parts of the military, certainly in the Marine Corps, I know, they have an up or out policy. I think the whole Navy it has, as far as going all the way back to World War II, because it's like, all right, you're at this level. If you don't get the next job within a couple of years, you're supposed to retire. Because if you don't get it in the next couple of years, you're not going to. And so there's a certain amount of that to look forward to. We shall see.
We shall see, indeed. I just think it's incredibly fascinating because, like you have alluded to throughout this entire conversation, nothing happens in a vacuum, and everything happens for a reason. And we're just a couple of guys trying to put the pieces together. Maybe read some tea leaves while we're at it. But I thought it was a very interesting discussion to be had. That's for sure. Let's see here.
Look at Noam de Bloom's one about the condiment folks, I guess you could call them. Hey, you know what it reminds me of, Noam de Bloom? Put that one up about we got rid of Bo DeMayo, meet our new hire, Joe DeKetchup.
Yep.
First of all, may I say that was a comment made with great relish. And second of all, it reminds me of the characters in the veggie, fruit, veggie, fruit show. So
that's great. That's fantastic. Oh man, the veggie fruit show, food rocks, and all those things right there. Gregor, yes, we are going to be talking about Josh tomorrow in just a moment. But before we do, let's go ahead and shout out one of our super chatters right here, Noam de Bloom, with the confirmed 189. I do appreciate it, and I do agree with you. Something's definitely turning in the Walt Disney Company, whether or not it's the tide when it comes to their internal culture regarding these things. remains to be seen, I suppose. We'll just have to judge their work output for that one. Go ahead.
Anyhow, Kitchen Cabaret, that's right.
Kitchen Cabaret. That's exactly right. Man, Kitchen Cabaret. Oh, the stories I could tell on that one. But for another time, as well is most appropriate here, the Ray movie might be for another time as well. September 21st, 2024, by Jordan Rumi of World of Real, Star Wars, The New Jedi Order, now, quote, on hold at Lucasfilm. Very, very interesting. Back in June, there were some rumors spreading that Lucasfilm's Rey movie, potentially titled New Jedi Order, was going to be shooting in September. I shot down these rumors by simply saying, no chance. Here's what I had written. Thank you for that. Daniel Rickman is now reporting that what I've been saying all along, forget about it. The film has a, quote, a lot more work to be done and is now, quote, on hold over at Lucasfilm. The earliest it would shoot is in 2025, and I'm pretty skeptical about that. In fact, I think the entire project will just get scrapped. It says right here, if only I could tell you what I've been hearing when it comes to the behind-the-scenes drama with this project. I swore not to say anything, and it's killing me not to write about it, but I'm fairly certain some of it will eventually come out.
I hate these articles. I agree with that it's not going to happen. I do. But this guy, who wrote this?
This is from World of Real, Jordan Rumi.
Jordan, first of all, you're going to tell us something. Then you're going to tell us how, here's what I've written. And if I could only tell you what I know, because I've written that I know, guess what? You probably think this song's about you. It's about Star Wars. It's about Rey. These people. Anyway, pardon me, but everybody's a literary critic, right? Including me, but still. If I could tell you what I've been hearing, and that's what I had written, and it's killing me not to write about it, but I'm fairly certain some of it will eventually be true. And now, come on. He's been trying to crack the script for well over a year. Oh, poor baby. They gave me all this money to write 150 pages of script, and I haven't been able to do it. But I spent all the money, so I guess I'll have to until they decide my approach is not the right one. And they'll call you, and you'll do it. Well, meanwhile, those of us out in the real world who do things like get up in the morning and feed the kids and go to work and pay for gas and try and put groceries in the cart, and can't even go to Disneyland by using our credit cards. We're just the little people. We don't matter.
It's an interesting idea. Well, he does go into what he does know, what has been publicly reported. I know at that Park Place, we covered this a little bit, I think on this show as well, T3PO as well, talking about how the Civic Knight has now, moved to doing the Peaky Blinders movie. We've talked about Damon Lindelof stuff and just all these moving parts and pieces. Now, look, they made a big to-do about this movie at Star Wars Celebration recently. They had Daisy Ridley actually on stage promoting it and so forth. They made a big to-do about Charmin Obaid-Chinoy actually doing the directing for this movie when that was released. But here's the interesting thing.
Haven't heard from her lately, have we?
yeah, we haven't heard from her or Daisy. I believe Daisy Ridley even said that
she's off in the hinterlands making men angry. Wasn't that what she claimed was her goal in life?
Yes, that is actually very true. And not on stage at D23, for example, during the Entertainment Showcase. All we got from Star Wars with the Entertainment Showcase was Skeleton Crew, we got Andor Season 2, and we got Mandalorian and Grogu. And that was it. Kathleen Kennedy didn't even take the stage to talk about any of the projects that she's most passionate about, and you would think that the Rey movie would be included in that. Yes, and Disney Fan 55 with the $5 says something very relevant to this discussion right here. I'm still waiting for Rian Johnson's trilogy. Yes, I can go through the list of stuff that has been either announced or rumored.
By the way, side question. Because we have so many good, well-informed, smart people out there in our audience. Has anybody in anything in this whole franchise or these franchises or this era ever got an idea for a movie that's one movie? Is it always a trilogy? Is it always a series of 18 movies that are all interlocked that you need to do your homework to watch, can't you just make one work? Wouldn't making one work be the prerequisite to being given carte blanche for 3? Or am I just, you may say
No,
I'm dreaming, but I'm not the only one.
I think that's kind of what did in Solo. If Solo was a film that was just kind of on its own, talking about the life and history of Harrison Ford's character Han Solo in that film, I think it would be, fine. The fact that they were trying to, rope in, Darth Maul, make it connect to a bigger world, set up a trilogy of films maybe, or something else with these Star Wars stories. That I think did a number on that film, and made people look at that film as, oh, you're just trying to set up something else with this film, and not having the film be good on its own. I think it's a great point you bring up, Lou, and also too, I mean, the list of creatives that have been attached to some of these things is alarming. I got my list right here. David Benioff, D.B. Weiss, Gareth Edwards, Ryan Johnson, Colin Trevorrow, Phil Lord, Christopher Miller, Josh Trank, Patty Jenkins.
None of those, they get paid for being attached, even if they get paid later to be unattached.
But what about the reputation of the studio, Lou? I mean, this is, it's crazy just how many projects have gone in and out of Lucasfilm in the last, 10 and
they're moving dirt on all of them, I guarantee you.
Yes. Yeah, we're going to be talking about that in just a moment.
And by the way, I see in the chat, B.R. Geist, yeah, me too. I even had the dish towels with the colander combo on them. He said Kitchen Cabaret was my childhood show. Anybody who did not sing along with Veggie, Fruit, shame on you.
Yes, you have no soul. No, I don't know. No, I mean, I think Taika Waititi recently came out and said that movie's not going to happen. Yes, Ryan Johnson's trilogy, definitely not going to happen.
It's harder to attach his name to it, Too many vowels.
Yeah. Well, that's a fair point. But this is just one more film that the company or Lucasfilm at least makes a lot to do with, and yet it's likely not going to happen just based on, and we Jordan might have exclusive sources and stuff that he can't actually say, but I mean, just reading what is going on with the production, the cast, and so forth, this is never coming through to fruition. I would feel, but yeah.
And as I also said about this situation, look at how people are always asking me, well, how did they do it in the old days in Hollywood? In the old days in Hollywood, if you had a bright young actress like Daisy Ridley, you nurtured her, you built her, you made her into something because she was valuable to you and to your company and to herself. Now they seem to go out of their way to tear these people down. They go out of their way to make a big splash with them, announce them. They make the movie, they get identified with the franchise or the character, and now it's like, we never heard of you. Well, we've got a script, but you haven't read it because we haven't really written it. And it's going to be so great someday. And meanwhile, we've got 17 other people thinking of other ways to do it without you. Because let's face it, if they couldn't make it a hard and fast, where we all start from rule, the next Star Wars, back when they stopped making good ones, was at least going to have Han and Leia. And if they couldn't do that, then don't believe anybody who says, well, they've got to have Rey. You just, yes, I know about Sweden, but it was a different joke that came from somewhere else. Honest. It was well intended when I said that, and then Switzerland. So,
this is a fair point too. Nom de plume. I don't think that Taika Waititi film should happen after Thor: Love and Thunder. Yeah, I mean some of the most recent products from some of these directors and creatives and so forth.
But you don't know, Vash. You don't have any idea how much was them. How much was Big Bob watching it 5 times and saying, change this, change that? How much was somebody in some other level of the bureaucracy? These are machine movies, and the only reason they put a name on the front as to who did it is because they think it sells tickets.
Mm.
You know how many directors in the history of Hollywood sell tickets? You could probably name them on less than your 10 fingers. You really could.
Yeah.
I mean, Hitchcock did, certainly. Orson Welles didn't sell tickets. Even John Huston mostly didn't sell tickets by his name being on it or not.
Yeah.
Spielberg, yes. But you know,
Spielberg in recent memory, I don't
maybe
think
not.
Even he sells. Yeah.
No, well,
that's the thing.
But that's because he hires people whose names are going to make people run away screaming, like Miss Zegler. But anyway,
yeah.
All I'm saying is, you know, the old joke was, well, did you hear about the fill-in ethnicity of somebody you want to make a joke about here? Actress who came to Hollywood and screwed the writers. See?
Yeah.
So,
well, I think of names
the way that it's used in the business, the phrase is, do they open a picture?
Yeah.
RDJ does. Who else? In the Marvel, Harrison Ford used to.
Yeah.
Who else? Who else?
Chris Evans, maybe?
Nah.
You don't think so?
Nah. Not at all. Not at all.
Well, I'll say this. If
the proof of it is, they didn't think they needed him to sell another Captain America movie.
Well, then that might be there.
I know it came from the plot, blah 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 blah. But
no, but I think you're right though. You have very few talents that'll actually bring in people. Now that list probably incorporates actors.
Well, see, and even then,
creatives and directors and stuff like.
But the actors who are so identified with a particular character,
mm-hmm.
if it's the weekend and you and your buddies are picking a movie to go, well, you want to go see the new Chris Evans movie? Who? You want to go see the new Captain America movie? Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'll qualify that. If Chris Evans is playing Captain America, I think people are going to see that film. But if it's just
not
Chris
because
Evans,
of him, because of Captain America.
That's a fair point. Yeah.
So anyway, all I'm saying is,
but even like Ray,
the reason why that did work in the old days for Bogart, it did work for make the list, John Wayne, is because those people were stars and the studios knew how to make them and keep them and build them, and right or wrong, they knew which parts they should be in and shouldn't be in.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked because the audience had a relationship, not with the Warner Brothers, but with the idea of what a Humphrey Bogart Warner Brothers gangster movie was going to be like, and said, yeah, I'd see another one of those. Of course, it was also less exposure because they couldn't see all the old ones on TV as a choice compared to going out and spending money. But, anyway.
It's interesting. I think,
and if it isn't working for actors who, at least during the course of 2 hours, for better or ill, the audience builds an imagined relationship with, it sure as hell doesn't work for a director or a writer. It just doesn't.
Yeah.
So this business of, we attached all these names, they all got paid for being attached. Hey, you want to take a shot at this? We've had 7 other guys do it. And let me tell you, behind the scenes, there is a lot of negotiation and a lot of investigation into how much of it was you and how much of it was the 3 guys before you and how much of it was the girl after you. And the reason is because of residuals. And the guilds adjudicate that, not the studio, not the agents. So I've been on those committees that adjudicate those things. Oh yeah.
That's a good point. I think Christopher Nolan. I think that's a creative that definitely
absolutely for me.
In there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But there's not a lot of those left, like you said, though. So,
I will say, however, in specific instances, for example, if it wasn't his name, and it wasn't what's his name, Cillian Murphy's face, you think you'd get as many people as you did to go see a movie about the atom bomb?
That's a fair point. Well, it was a big risk.
A 3-hour movie about the atom bomb.
Well, even if you look at the
that it's a brilliant picture, I do not dispute. I think it deserved every award it got and then some, but I don't think it would have made anywhere near as much box office if those people weren't associated with it.
Agreed. And would Universal have given up as much as they did in order to produce that film? Because it was a very
and when you've got somebody like him,
contract.
He brings the project and says, if you want to make a movie with me, this is the one I want to make. So, anyway,
it's good. It's a great point. It's a fantastic point. But speaking of creatives and, I don't know, faces and names, there is one name that is on the tip of everybody's tongue today, it would seem, and that would be Josh D'Amaro, because, he's decided to give a little speech. And he said something very interesting during that speech. He says, if we are going to make a change in anything, we must create something that's even better than what was there before. He's talking about Disney attractions, folks, as Josh D'Amaro is the head of the experiences division within Disney. We may not always get this right, but I believe Walt would have wanted us to try. And these comments were delivered via the HubSpot's Inbound 2024 conference that was just held in Boston last week, and this quote was provided by the New York Times.
Flies is the idea that there's no place else to put it but on top of what used to be there, which it's certainly at Disney World is never true. Never.
Yeah. At Walt Disney World especially, right? Because you could make an argument, right? Back in Walt's day, obviously he had a lot of limitations when it came to the designing and building of Disneyland, especially initially, right? He was just trying to get funding for the project in general. He wasn't thinking about buying as much real estate as they eventually did in Walt Disney World. So that meant that everything had to be pretty space conscious and have to essentially justify its not only its expense but
and
its
that's why
therefore.
sightlines were once important, because since things were relatively close together, what you could see from one had to work with what you saw at the other.
Right. Yeah.
So you can't on the one hand say, we have enough room for 7 more parks or lands or however you want to define it. And we don't have to give a damn that you can see this thing totally incongruous to what you're doing from that spot. And we don't have to care about the kinematics and all the rest of that stuff.
No,
he knows better. He knows better.
He does, and he's more knowledgeable than he initially lets on, as is evidenced by his speech, which we actually have the recording, folks. We're gonna play it in just a moment. But when it comes to like Walt Disney, it's like like even Storybook Land, for example. I remember hearing the story where when they were done constructing Storybook Land with some of those props and sets and so forth, that was included in that attraction. And remember, that was an open day attraction, closed, and it was redone later on. He was like, you know what, this is pretty good for now. This'll do, kind of thing. And he was, what was kind of shocking is that he just invested all this money into building this attraction that even he at the time upon its completion was saying, yeah, this will do okay for now. He was always looking to improve things.
But let's look at 2 things about that.
Please.
First, he says here, if we're going to make a change, tearing something completely out to put something else in its place is not a change. Just like it's not an expansion. Yeah. But secondly, when you come back to Walt and Storybook Land and all of that, remember that was buy a ticket to every ride. So if I've got an extra ride to sell tickets to, net, it's better to have that than to say, well, we've got 2 good ideas here, but this one's better, so let's not do the other one. Maybe it's let's do both of them, because if one of them isn't up to your cup of tea, the other one might be, and either way, we're going to get a C ticket out of you or whatever. So
it's that is,
it's surprising
to be consideration
in a business and a company that has had so much history written about it and so much backstory exposed and so many things that they've done themselves, truth or fiction, about how they've done things over the years, that they get away with such absolute BS about it. That they get away with telling their legend rather than their true tale, or making seriously alterations like this one.
Absolutely. And Kiss My Grits is actually right on here. Like you said, Lou, it's the legend, right? Josh is plagiarizing Tony Baxter with that quote. He absolutely is. Tony Baxter was the one that always said, hey, it must be better than what was there before, because like he understood from just experience of working on these projects, for example, Adventure Through Inner Space being replaced by Star Tours. It's like that could have gone south if Star Tours wasn't as good of a ride as it was when it eventually opened in 1987.
And by the way, if we take as the obvious example of what they're talking about, Tiana, it's not just it has to be as good. If Tiana had been as good as Splash Mountain, you still have a problem because Splash Mountain is so beloved. It's not just a good ride.
It can't be just a good ride when it replaces Splash. You know, Splash being a legendary attraction that people have so many fond memories with, and it has a cast of characters of over 100 at least at Disneyland. I mean, that attraction that replaced Splash Mountain had to be way better. And well, obviously it wasn't, and that's why I think I saw a tweet the other day in which I think it was Belle on Twitter saying that she was the only one on the attraction at the time, which is just crazy for a 2,000 capacity attraction like that. It is profound that these things be better. But I want to go ahead and analyze Josh D'Amaro's complete comments, because I always like to look at the source of these things. And well, Inbound was kind enough to give us the entire presentation. I'm going to play just a portion of it. It goes on for about 3 to 4 minutes. We will go ahead and break it down right now.
Taking these big chances on things that we've never done before, I think it's what sets us apart from anyone else. That can be a robot that's flying through the air like you just saw. It could be a new theme park in China. Maybe it's a cruise ship that we're sending to an untested market, or building Star Wars land at Disneyland.
He's talking about courage for the company. This is kind of this part of his symposium here. And he talks about how it was courageous for them to spend money developing a Spider-Man robot to fly over the heads of people at Adventures Campus. He talks about building a new theme park in China. That was basically, I love that qualification right there. Yeah, not so courageous to do those things, I would say. Especially,
and I would say the robot thing. See, we were going to have another big attraction there, and maybe 3, and it was all going to open at the same time in that marvelous Avengers Campus. But boy, we were brave. We got a thing that looks out of every. I mean, it's good, but it's the same as every one of these videos from what's it called, Boston Dynamics or whatever, that robot company that has all the robot dogs.
Right.
It's like that's neat. That's a 25-second YouTube clip. Neat.
Yeah.
But do you interact with it? Do you ride it? Does it tell a story?
Right.
No.
Well, I guess from his perspective, he's saying that look, because it doesn't do those things, it might be a risk for them because, well, they I'm guessing don't want to spend too much money on R&D.
Well, that's the point. They only have so much money. As opposed to that ride they were going to do. There's no question what they should spend the money on.
I would agree with you. And maybe Adventures Campus looked at a completely different light.
And by the way, look, it's up on top of the building thing, whatever you want to call it, attraction. Doesn't do anything for capacity and throughput, does it? Because everybody walking through there anyway looks up and it's a bird, it's a plane, it's not Superman. And next, so.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
And you may think about that last one, building Star Wars at Star Wars Land. That's a no-brainer, right? Well, it's a little more complicated than that.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Because that project took a whole lot of courage for our organization. Let me explain that to you through another story.
Dude, explain. I want to hear this one.
Courage. Yeah, please. Courage to build Star Wars? Come on.
I took that role of president of Disneyland. I got to experience a tradition passed down from one president to the next. My predecessor took me up to Walt's apartment inside the park. It's a special, special place. Not a lot of guests have access to it. And this was a big moment for me. Some of you might know that Walt loved grilled cheese and chili. So that's what we actually made up in the apartment. We actually made it on Walt's own hot plate, just like he used to do when he was in the park. And then we went out on Walt's patio, and we watched as guests strolled by on Main Street. We talked about what it means to manage a place so special to millions of people, so special to the world. And in that moment, I must admit that I felt the weight of the responsibility that I was taking on.
The weight of the responsibility that I was taking on.
Are we getting to the courage about Star Wars here?
Well, eventually we are. A little long-winded. But that is interesting because he talked about the weight of everything that he's actually doing, but then...
No, and I think that's all true, and that's very admirable and swell. But
sure,
the lesson for the rest of us is...
Because Disney fans, they take their fandom very, very seriously. And as I said at the beginning, they're so incredibly passionate about our company. And you know what? I love that. It's such a point of pride that we're held to such a high standard. In many ways, Disneyland is their park. We just stand here as the caretakers. Our guests sometimes spend their lives in our worlds. If we make a change, some of our fans feel like we're altering part of their personal story. And I know that because I'm actually one of them. I told you about my experiences on Peter Pan and Soarin' with my family. These are powerful, powerful memories. They're handed down from one generation to the next.
Powerful memories, folks. That's why we're going to be replacing Rivers of America and Magic Kingdom with cars. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, yes, it is very admirable, but then you look at their work output and you go, I don't know if that's a guiding principle in the organization as much as you think it is.
If he was a less accomplished salesman, and I admire a lot of what he's done, don't get me wrong, he would have gone on to what the average corporate evil person everybody imagines would have said, which is, so since they're going to bitch anyway, we might as well rip it all out. Even if we took out one tree, they're all going to complain. Who cares?
Right. Yeah. Well, and he talks about one tree as well.
So as we build for new generation, we make these decisions very, very carefully. For Galaxy's Edge, we had to make a lot of adjustments to our infrastructure at Disneyland so that we could build this new land and then prepare for the crowds that we knew that it was going to attract. And that included closing a part of the section called Big Thunder Ranch. It had been there for nearly 30 years. Well, during that time, I told my team, listen, if you have a question about anything that we're changing, anything that holds value to our guests, let's talk about that. No detail is too small. And they did. 4 or 5 times a week, I was out in the park. If we needed to move a tree, even a foot to the left, we talked it through. Where did that tree come from? What does it mean? We faced these challenges. Walt is in the same place. He faced these challenges too. He was constantly evaluating everything, always looking for ways that he could improve. And that's why I always remind my team, if we're going to make a change in anything, we must create something that's even better than what was there before. We may not always get this right, but I believe Walt would have wanted us to try. He would have wanted us to be courageous. Walt, he was an adventurer. He's a risk taker. This is the standard that we all live up to today.
Indeed, I would say it is the standard, but have they been achieving that standard? I'm not so sure. You might. These are platitudes, yes, but it really comes from the action from those words. And frankly, we just haven't seen that. Not when you look at Communicore Hall, for example. That is, yes, an embarrassment. Not when you look at Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Go ahead, Lynn.
That's also true. And by the way, he says we may get it wrong. Wonder how he feels about the Galactic Star Cruiser. Did they get it wrong? The audience wrong.
That's
before you ever got into, well, what's it going to contain and what's going to happen inside? Couldn't you get to the basics of, to make this work, we have to charge people more than they're willing to pay? But if you start from the attitude of, they'll pay anything. We've got them by the short and curlies. So what? Because if you start from, they'll pay for it, no matter what, because we're Disney and we're better. That's where you get to Epic Universe, big deal. It's not us. They won't go there like they will to us. They'll go to us too. They'll go there to look. Sure, they'll be curious. I'm curious. Looks like a fun day, but it's not us.
Yeah.
when you start from there, the question of is it too expensive never comes into it. When you start from there, the question of will people go back never comes into it.
Yeah.
You never get to the basic things that International Widgets goes through when they come up with a new model widget. Right? So.
Yeah. I would agree with you. And I know somebody has a lot more to say on this specific topic. And he has just arrived right here. This is Ron from Follow the
Where you
Bradley's
been,
Fun.
Ron? I've been winging it all by myself here, for God's sakes.
Can you guys hear me okay? I rushed.
If anything, you're too loud.
I'm too loud. Okay, I can temper my voice down. That's no problem.
No, I mean, your mic is like overdriving a little bit.
So it sounds like you're talking about the changeover to Carousel of Progress, where they're going to change the song to "It's a Great Big Beautiful Damara." Is that right?
Yes, that is right. Talking about specifically his comments that he just made here. We just played a video.
Burbank has a dream, and that's the start. They tell us we can do it for $1 a part, and then when it breaks, we find and see it's a big snafu for you and me.
Indeed.
On the fly, So.
I am a great, big, beautiful Judge Damara.
Now, sorry.
Disney
Ron,
has a tradition of people in that job that they make sort of slights out of their name. Remember when people in the parks in operations used to always say, well, it'll be okay once we work the newness out of it. So back when Dick Nunes was in charge. So anyway.
You can't forget Bob Cheapsteak or Cheap Paycheck or whatever people called him.
Yeah, no,
and that was before he was CEO. So.
Yeah, Bob Chapek there. Yeah, before he was CEO. I mean, I remember hearing stories about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and how that was cut pretty good there by Mr. Old Chapek right there in order to keep the costs down, because obviously he was attempting to manage everything in such a way that he would maybe possibly be a CEO contender, but also to, keep the costs that had been inflated before he arrived down as much as possible. And so it is interesting.
Am I correct that all of the interactive goodies that were supposed to go into Galaxy's Edge, a lot of them got put into the hotel?
So much got cut.
And so the question becomes, all of those are being developed at the same time. Which one wound up on which budget? Was this another case of moving stuff from D+ to another department so that we don't have to put it on that budget? And you see what I mean? So this business about courage and moving a tree sounds swell.
I think the budgetary issues started when they decided to shell out $70 billion for Fox, which has been nothing but a losing proposition the whole way through.
It always, for example, bothers me when they talk about Galaxy's Edge and they said it was X number of dollars each for the two of them. That's bull. Taking out the back end of the river at Disneyland and redoing all of that, they didn't have to do any of that stuff in Orlando. They just plopped it down and there it was, pretty much.
They had to destroy everything that was great.
Well, there is that, but that's a bulldozer. That's not building a bridge with chipmunks nibbling on the foundations of it, and shutting down the Twain and everything. I joked. I said when they do this demolition at Disney World, are they going to get those same photo canvas curtains that they put up over the two entrances to the river at Disneyland when they shut it down? You know that right across either end there in. At Disneyland, they put up these like a banner of how the river used to look when they drained it, when they cut it off all the time they were working on it. So
I'm lucky. I have a friend of mine who we actually we're cast members together at Walt Disney World, and this was just after the reopening from the pandemic closures. So we both were not where we were supposed to be. So we were both lifeguards together at the same time. Then she went into Imagineering when I went back to Subic. She's left the company now. And it's very, very interesting. She's a great artist. And she had me take pictures of all around Rivers of America, Tom Sawyer's Island, and she is doing artistic renderings of every spot of what I sent her photograph wise, what it's going to look like when Cars Land is there. So I'm looking forward to that. And she said she's very, very happy to share it with us and the whole that Park Place network. So I'm excited for that.
Oh,
but yeah, this is just ruination. It's not. I caught the part of the show. I was driving home trying to get back here and heard you talking about Josh tomorrow, talking about courage.
Right.
I don't see how any of this is courageous in any way. What courage?
And I'll tell you what's really not courageous.
Yeah.
Saying it about yourself. Look how brave I am. We are.
Well, you know what is really
somebody else to say that.
What is even more not courageous is the cowardice that there was when they announced this, whole big villains land and cars and everything coming, but didn't actually give a location where this stuff was precisely going to go, that being the expense of Rivers of America, or even Monsters Inc. land, for example. Talked about that, but didn't include the Muppets in that conversation. Also do Avatar at Disney California Adventure, didn't include where that was going to go. It was only later that we actually discovered where these things might go, and a lot of people were rightfully upset about that, mainly Rivers of America, but those other projects, had.
And they knew they were going to announce it the next day after the event.
Exactly. Right.
That was the part that got me.
Right after the expo had officially closed up. It was crazy. It was absolutely insane. So,
which proves that a lot of this was just show and tell for D23, for the audience that was at D23. You want to, it's all theatrics without pomp and circumstance. Who knows how truly far away from actually doing this they were when they announced that, when we now know that they don't have the permits filed correctly. They have to refile. They have to look. I mean, when I looked at that immediately and I said, I'm there almost every week, and I know Florida land. I'm here. I live in Florida. I know what has to be done. When you're talking about moving bodies of water, there's so much that has to be done that's a huge, especially in amount of water.
High water table, very difficult to deal with location.
Yeah.
Here, Vash, go into Slack and find the picture I just put in your thread there, and put it up here. Take a chance on me. This is taken by yours truly on my very last day at Disneyland before moving east. And I got to fulfill a bucket list and then some and drive the Twain.
Oh.
And this is the view from up on top where you drive the Twain from, of Galaxy's Edge being built on the other side of the train track.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see, what that entailed. And I have more pictures, but I'm in them and I'd rather not show them. But
can I ask a quick question about that?
Sure.
And to Bash, I know you've been out there. Does your Galaxy's Edge, does the West Coast Galaxy's Edge have from the backside really poor facades of the mountains on sticks that look like lollipops, like ours does?
Yes, no. It does. It's not as.
I wouldn't call them that bad, but there you can see that with the scaffolding still on all the towers of those weird. They look like the Japan Pavilion at Epcot right now.
They do. Looking at that from far.
Well, I'll say this. So you can see the backsides of them from the Mickey and Friends parking structure, which is a little bit unfortunate because it's kind of giving
over there.
Away
you're right. Yeah.
Before you get in, but I would say within the park they're mostly concealed everywhere but Toontown. Toontown is the only place in which you can actually see the backside of some of those rocks, and that doesn't look that great. But mostly, especially in the Rivers of America portion and everything like that, you are there is nothing to break that illusion.
But they do name them after Obi-Wan Schweitzer because they're the backside of rocks. But that's that view that you can get from the Mickey and Friends parking structure.
Right.
When this was being built, every blogger in Southern California would go out there once a week just to pay the parking fee and go up to the top floor and take pictures. Here it is. It's
Absolutely.
coming. It's coming. You know, it's sort of low rent bioreconstruct because you can see it all from there.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. All the bloggers, I believe, Fresh Baked and the Woo and everybody else were documenting as much as possible.
Yeah,
and it was amazing to see, and it was exciting to see. And then it finally opened, and it was like, it looks pretty, but doesn't necessarily fulfill a lot of the promises that were promised initially. And in that case, we didn't lose much in order to get Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I mean, we lost Big Thunder Ranch and so forth, but and they did redo the river and shorten it up.
The one
we lost
thing
a lot. We lost
the
everything.
One thing I was always shocked. The first thing I predicted when they said that's where they're going to build it, I said, I guarantee you, someplace back in there at one of the food places, they're going to do the old turkey legs from Big Thunder Ranch and rebuild them as bento legs or something,
Right.
Never happened.
Oh,
it was one of the
so many opportunities.
I that on my trip to Disneyland things, Ron, were these giant turkey legs a la Ren Fair,
Yeah, we have them here.
Barbecue back there. And I thought, they've got to bring some of those the baked beans and the barbecue. It's a natural for an outpost on a strange planet. Never happened.
Sure. Yeah, I think there was like one rib dish that they had at Docking Bay 7. And then they got rid of it later on. The Caddy ribs. Oh, one of my favorites.
We have the Caddy ribs, and they are actually my favorite. They're literally my favorite thing to eat at Hollywood Studios, but I don't go that often. And I did have a bad batch one time where they were really dry. Oof. But most of the time they're pretty good. It's a very. I wish I could get a hold of that sauce recipe because it's just so different than anything else. But that's the only that for me. Like it's literally the only thing good about Galaxy's Edge because. It's when you first go to the land and you see the Millennium Falcon, that's awe-inspiring, that's striking. But if you're a return visitor and you go the third or fourth time, it has completely worn off. That's what's so weird about it. It's not like Tower of Terror. I go on Tower of Terror every single time. I can repeat that ride. It's a blast every single time I go on it. It's so repeatable, and just like a really good movie, what makes movies multi-billion-dollar movies is when people want to go to the movie theater 5, 6, 7, 10 times to see it while it's still in the movie theater, and it doesn't lose that excitement because there's something new to see. There's something.
And usually they're bringing friends with them who haven't seen it the first time.
Yeah, and I've actually done that at Galaxy's Edge. There was a friend of mine who came down here from Missouri, and he could not get a virtual queue for Rise of the Resistance. Now I know how to get them all the time, so I got it. I had a virtual queue, and the Blue Umbrella people, guest services, were nice enough to connect our account so that they were able to get on that ride with me because I didn't pay for a vacation. I'm a pass holder, got in, no problem, easy. They had paid for $1,000, several $1,000 vacation and getting into the park and the tickets, and then they weren't able to get a virtual queue. So, anybody that I've been able to help do that when they come down after spending thousands of dollars, I'll do. I don't know the guest services is as nice as they were. This was, I want to say, 2-3 years ago, and they may have kind of stopped that practice now. But it's the Galaxy's Edge is not. What bothers me more than anything else is when you have something like Galaxy's Edge that has potential and you spend millions of dollars and then you fell short. You didn't need to fall short. You're Disney. You could have not fallen short.
No, yeah.
The proof of that is when you compare, for example, those new rides at Japan, the Fantasy Springs rides in Japan. My God, we haven't seen an attraction like that in a long time. The degree of finish and fit, the degree of detail, the degree of just artistic beauty of them. And somebody in that early article, Vash, was talking about different leverage that Disney could use against Japan. They could threaten not to make them any more rides. And I thought, no, they can't. They can't afford to not make them any more rides. Those are the ones that make them money because they spend more money than they do on their own.
Wow, look at that. Look at that splash.
I know. That's the thing. So when you look at the work output of Imagineering, yes, in Tokyo, pretty good. But everywhere else, you're only as good as your last project. What their last project, I believe, is Communicore Hall at Epcot. I mean, and so it's like, okay, you say that you want to replace things and make them better than what was there before. Well, objectively speaking, Communicore Hall is dreadful compared to Innovations West or Communicore West that used to exist in that space.
Yeah.
You look at Splash, and it's not even comparable to Jonas Bite Adventure, just in terms of the creativity that went into the original ride. So I look at his comments, I examine his comments, is like, look, you say all the right things, but your actions speak louder than your words. And honestly, frankly, they're not very good. And I think it's very unfortunate that we have to lose anything in Walt Disney World.
It's so confused. Look at here, Greg R. says, and it's true, they're making the Hungry Bear restaurant, this is Disneyland, into, and they have now done it, a barbecue restaurant. But it isn't a barbecue restaurant. It is a barbecue restaurant which is themed after what? The new version of the Country Bears, which no longer exists in Disneyland. They turned it into Winnie the Pooh. And then, so it's like, well, I'm a first-time visitor to any of these parks, and I go to Disneyland and I say, oh, hey, there's a place with barbecue. What is I forget, pick a character. Liver Lips
Romeo.
Yeah,
but where's that in Disneyland? Oh, it's not here. That's in Florida. Where's the sense of that? And if you wanted to add barbecue, fine, just do it. But why do you have to theme it to this theme of a ride that's no longer there?
But if they do bring it back, you'll get to hear, I can show you the world.
Yeah.
Or
at least the nearest Buc-ee's.
Oh, God.
Again, that's another example of things replacing other things that are not as good as the original. I mean, come on. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating he would make that comment. It really is.
I say this about the Bears. The animatronics update is good, and it's easier to change that show out. Thank God.
Yeah, but
Ron, earlier today, I mentioned in the chat to Vash, we're talking about the whole they're going to use the heavy hand of influence on Japan to make them Tiana-ize their Splash Mountain or not. And I happened to find on YouTube here yesterday or the day before, I put it up somewhere, you can get it. It was a documentary from the opening of Epcot about the making of Spaceship Earth. And it mentioned in passing the original Spaceship Earth, 62 animatronic humans and 2 horses.
Yeah.
Well, golly, when have they done that again except to take them out and make fewer and fewer and lesser? And it's like, golly. Well, and they explained very interestingly, this professor of history from my alma mater of USC, and how he and Ray Bradbury and others got together to plan out Spaceship Earth. Yeah. And he says, this is a professor of communications, not history. And he said, we wrote down all of the major events in human history of communication, whether it was coming up with an alphabet or the printing press and radio and one thing or another, and then pushed those around on a piece of paper to find the ones that went together, both in timeline and in type, and came up with 16 or 17 scenes. And then they started plotting it out, and then they figured out how to get it into the ball and like that. Do they do that anymore? Never mind story department, story, whatever it's called, puts the propaganda in it. It was like, gosh, that's how I'd do it, wouldn't you? If you were trying to do something like that.
Josh Giaimoto talks about this. He says, we're always going to be compared to our past and the standard that Walt set. And yeah, you are. I mean, you talk about, Lou, when you look at the ambition of Spaceship Earth, right? This incredible structure, which a geodesic sphere of that size is just crazy in 1982. That's for sure. But beyond that, it has an attraction within it that rotates around, an omnimover, and actually descends in the way it does. I mean, it's a modern marvel when you look at it, especially how it's constructed and so forth, and the multiple layers that it has, and the fact water routing.
Each of those panels is built individually. None of them identical because they have to channel the water from the rain in the right direction and all the rest of it. I mean,
is wild. But
it's
the
wild to
ambition is
go
insane.
under Spaceship Earth when it's raining and you're dry.
Yeah.
Because the water should be trickling down and dripping right on you. And where does it go? It doesn't.
No.
Somebody, I saw a comment that really bothered me because they said one of the reasons the Communicore building was changed from the 3-layer building that was going to be in the concept art is because somebody was worried about people gathering under it during the rain. And I'm like, that is the biggest load of hooey, that I've ever heard. That's not true.
That's ridiculous.
People gather under everything during the rain. It would just be one more structure to do that. But that's
besides,
super
they're in
annoying.
the poncho business every day at around 2 p.m.
Right.
Plus, I don't think that rain was definitely not a consideration for what they did end up with at all. Neither was sunshine. Neither was. I mean, I go out there now, and sometimes I think 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 100 degrees, and they have a band come on the stage, and there's maybe 15, 20 people gathered, and they basically do a Zumba class, is what I'm calling it, because they do some Spanish music and they have some dancers out there, and everybody's doing the same thing together. But it's like you have a space that 500 people could fill the space if you had built it correctly. You have 20 people filling that space, because nobody wants to watch anything in 100-degree heat uncovered. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's and then they actually put some type of a covering shade over the area where it's just cornhole.
But see, to me, that and all these other things lately are an example of the idiocy of their bad marketing, because they opened it. Hey, here it is. We're finally finished. This big empty bad meeting area lounge of a Marriott hotel someplace in the Midwest, and everybody complained. Everybody said it was ugly. Everybody said it was plain. They said, "Yeah, but we're going to decorate it for all the various festivals." And after catching all of that flack, then they closed it to redecorate it for the festival, and now they opened it again. And it still stinks.
It's worse.
But you now have to blame it one time. See what I'm saying? If you were going to shut it down in 6 weeks anyway to do this conversion for this festival, why bother to open it in the first place?
Well, there's no conversion though. All they did was open the windows for where they serve the mac and cheese.
I'm not saying it's true. I'm saying that's what they advertised.
They lied. What a surprise! Disney lied.
Surprise. But it's putting aside the design, putting it aside the failure of it, comparing it to what used to be. It's just stupid PR. I mean, there are professional people out there in that profession. They may be slime and liars. A lot of them, the ones I've known, are lazy as hell. But still, it's PR 101. Wait, now you're going to open it again in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever the interim was. Why don't we just wait? Oh, because we want to announce that everything is finished. Yeah, but it stinks.
Didn't they do that in the wake of Tiana being so bad, and they were hoping one would?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't
and
know.
the same thing happened there. It's like, okay, I don't think, and I claim ignorance because I didn't grow up in the South, and I'm not into the whole ethnic politics of the world. Do you think Juneteenth has gotten any more publicity since it existed than it has over this whole thing? And when are we going to open Tiana? And is it going to be Juneteenth? It's like, what if they gave a Juneteenth and nobody gave a damn about Tiana, you know? But, they had to have that. And therefore, they had to open it no matter what, hell or high water. Therefore, we didn't get the synchronization of the cars right. Therefore, they all back up. And therefore, we put in animatronics we knew weren't going to work. And therefore, we still haven't have they had 2 days in a row where there's been no problems?
I don't think so.
I mean, wouldn't that be like a really generous minimum requirement to say grand opening?
I would say I have been one of the more fortunate people, because the days now I've had a virtual queue more days than I've actually gone with the virtual queue, but on the days that I've had the virtual queue, I have lucked out and it actually has been open, and I never don't think I've ever gone once during the time when my virtual queue was
Right.
in a little window.
Right.
The first, now I would say this though, the first time my virtual queue was supposed to be like group, I don't know, 6 or something like that. One day it was the actual opening day, and the opening day it didn't open till noon. So I was supposed to ride at 9 o'clock, and I had rushed to the park and everything, and then I didn't get on it until noon because of how long it took to open. But for the first time the other day, my whole family, Virginia, Xander, myself, we all got to ride it together. That was the first time we got to ride together. So it was interesting to have the family experience. And I put my camera down. I didn't film anything. I just wanted to experience it. And it was, I would say, as good as any log flume out there. The story makes no sense. There's that, like, no, don't even try to follow the story.
What story?
It's you're shrinking down to find a band made of fireflies. I don't know what the hell that.
The story is we couldn't find jazz musicians in New Orleans, so we have to have you recruited. That was the first thing Lorena and I talked about when it first was announced. And I'm going, they couldn't like spit and hit 50 musicians for this band somewhere in New Orleans. I'm not saying they're all going to be Louis Armstrong, but still.
No, but you had to have Firefly band musicians. Anyway, my point is, after we got off it, this is my son's exact words to me were, why do we have to do that? I wanted to ride Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
Sorry, I got you the wrong virtual queue. I felt so bad. So we'll have to go back and ride Guardians of the Galaxy. But that he was disappointed, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, when we've been talking about these slack in crowd numbers, you have a situation, taking the big view, that first of all, people can't just go when they want to. They have to go when they can afford it, when they can get the time off work, when school's out, whatever it happens to be, to Orlando, to any of these parks. And they all know, because the publicity's been brilliant, that this time next year, there's going to be this amazing thing down the road at Universal. And so whether they go between now and then, whereas in the glorious halcyon days of pre-COVID, everybody went every year and they'd spend whatever they want to spend, and we were all rich and famous, and yeah, right. Now they say, well, gosh, what reason do I have to go between now and then? Well, Disney's done this amazing thing where they've taken Splash Mountain and turned it into something. Oh, yeah? I heard about that. Is that good? Yeah. And so we're going to get it open by Juneteenth, by God, because we promised. It doesn't work, and there's going to be nothing but bad press and disappointment. But that, in turn, never mind this week and last month, what about the people that theoretically scheduled their trip for next week and the week after that and next month, who were coming primarily, rather than waiting 6 months or a year to go see the big new thing? Well, we'll make one more Disney trip just by itself, because at least this gives us something new and exciting. It ain't. You don't suppose there have been a few cancellations for these next few months, do you? Of people saying, you know what, times are tight, inflation's getting worse, there's an election, there's all kinds of conflict in the world. Maybe we should just sort of pause and go to our cousin's beach house at the lake for a week and put the money in the bank for next year. Well, of course. Well, and again, if you're realistic, you should be able, if you're a professional, like they claim to be and have been for decades, to figure that out. But instead, if you're going to have a grand opening and it's going to be a special thing, swell. But if it's going to be anything less than special, people are going to hate you. People are going to, look, if this had been, well, we got another ride opening and we're opening rides all the time, and this is just coming when it's ready and we'll get it out there and we hope you like it, swell. If it ain't perfect, if it has a couple glitches, if it has a few things that weren't too well thought out for storytelling reasons, well, they could have done better, but it's okay. But if you promise it as the second coming of Walt Disney,
that's where you get into trouble for sure.
Yeah, I know, and even little things. Take ride wait times. Ever since, what was that? touring plans or whatever that people used to first started making them very available online. In the old days, it was well known that when you walked up to, let's say, Pirates of the Caribbean and it said wait time 40 minutes, they really meant 30. It was always advertised as longer than it really was because Disney thought, boy, if you get there in 20 instead of 30 or 30 instead of 40, you're going to feel good about it. We're going to keep the Le Bon Temps Roulé for New Orleans Square. Now, well, what we're going to do is jigger it around to hide things from people who look at our numbers and try and figure out if we're making any money this week. I can see being tempted. I can see somebody in the back row of the marketing monthly meeting say, hey, what if we... But eventually they would have said, no. You can only lose your reputation once, guys. But when that no longer applies, when sightlines no longer apply, when all these other things that maybe any one of them was not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things, but all of them together?
Yeah.
Okay. And we're going to charge twice as much money. Okay. And I mean, I was watching, what was it I was watching today? Some guy was doing it's that guy, Bright Sun, was doing a thing about the Grand Floridian just ain't quite as good as they claim it is, comparing it when it used to be. And it's a lovely hotel. I've stayed there. But when they showed these people going and it was working out for a family of 4, $1,600 a day. I'm sorry. And what were they comparing it to in the area?
They were
Four Seasons
hotels.
And Ritz-Carlton, right? Which have a brand and an image and a. I mean, I got to tell you something. I've stayed at all the major hotels, chains, big companies. Nobody does it like Four Seasons. Nobody. Ritz-Carlton is okay, but it ain't Four Seasons. Okay,
And
so when you compare in price, this room that's pretty, but it's a big, huge, empty room with a bed on this side and a desk on that side at the Grand Floridian. Yeah. Come on, guys, get real. And think about it. If you say, yeah, but we have to compete with them and they're charging 16, 18, whatever they're charging. Yeah, but if you charged 15, the rooms would be full. You'd still be getting top dollar. You'd still be doing whatever you're doing. You'd still be making the profit margin you're making. But even $100 difference is $100 difference if I'm staying for a week and I'm paying your extra passes to get on the rides that used to be part of the deal. See? So it just...
Look, and they are putting themselves on that pedestal. They're putting themselves on that standard, and I think they're paying for it, which we have a story about that we must get into because I think it is very worth getting into it. But before we do that, we have some super chats that have just come in. Thank you so much. Kiss My Grits with $20. Very much appreciated, Kiss My Grits. And another $10 super chat, by the way, as well. Lou, do you think Universal is making a huge mistake by splitting Wicked into 2 movies released 1 year apart? While it may be great Broadway musical, I don't think it has the same box office longevity like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings.
KMG, I got to tell you, I'm just not a Wicked person, so I can't be detailed about this. But as a theoretical thing, you're probably right, but they'll still do well with it that way. I don't think it has anything like the longevity or drawing power of a Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or anything like that. No, I don't. But
it's very dependent on word of mouth.
But I got to tell you, every time I've ever seen any of these clips of, people coming out of the theater or people going to see it when it comes to their town or whatever, man, these little girls are into that show like catnip. I mean, they really, 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 really love it. So as far as splitting it into 2, I do not know physically what the demands of making that movie were. But I do know that with the Lord of the Ring movies, for example, they were always intended to be more than 1. But I think both sets went 1 more than they originally intended, because when they realized how much they would have to cut out or how much they already had in the can that was good, they said, well, gosh, we got too much here to make just 1 more movie. We got to make 2 more movies and shoot very little to stretch it that way. So a huge mistake? No. I don't know if the alternative of just making 1 movie and saying, hey, hurrah, hooray, we did it, would have been as pregnant with potential if it really, really hit, as doing it this way is. In general, I hate making two movies at the same time that way. I think the first people who really did it, and it said they were doing it up front and personal, was Back to the Future 2 and 3. And in that case also, of course, you had the issue of demand for those stars. And if you couldn't get them all back together again, I have made little independent movies that had a sequel planned. And because the people in them were not movie stars and not famous people and might be dropping out of the business in the next 6 months, we shot both parts all at once because we didn't want to lose the people or the sets, or, there's some economies and some practicalities involved.
Superman 1 and 2, and then
that's very interesting too, because in Genre Guys we just redid it. We covered Superman the original, and it's really, I thought watching it, and I remembered that they did it that way, and of course things were more difficult as far as the special effects of him flying and all the rest of it, and you're making a movie with a totally unknown guy. I was shocked to remember, because I had forgotten how much, probably the first 20-25 minutes of that movie is setting up the plot for the second one. I thought, why are they, I don't know if I care if that capsule blows up, let alone what's going to happen to him once these bad guys that I have no identification with, no concept of, that I maybe recognize Terrence Stamp, but certainly not the other two. And I'm going, why are we spending so much time with them? Who cares? All of this is doing what? Saying Jor-El is a good citizen of Krypton and they should have believed him about the destruction of the planet. I mean, it doesn't connect at all. But then it's a weird movie that way anyway. I could go on about that. But yeah, I thought that was a risk, a huge risk. But if it turns out it wasn't such a big risk because that set was expensive, putting it all back together again would have been difficult. You had all these people anyway. You had Trevor Howard for a day, and what's his name? Jack, the other well-known British character actor who plays one of the judges. Oh, and who's the woman? Maria Schell. If you had those people and you could get them for a day and a half and 2 days and get 2 movies worth of name and expertise value out of it, maybe it wasn't such a big risk. Maybe it was pretty clever production management, So I'd have to see the numbers to really, really know.
Right. I would agree with that assessment. It's it could be a risk, but hey, Wicked's a big show. By the way, Ron, go ahead and check your mic settings. Make sure you're on the right mic. I've seen a couple of comments about that. How you don't sound as good as your tone usually is.
Because, like I said, I had to set up real fast. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you. What we hear is overdrive. What we hear is echo and overdrive, like it's and I can see you're not, but if you were eating the microphone, that's what I'd hear.
No. Let me see if I can change it.
That's better already.
You're good. You're good, Ron. Don't even worry about it. We have a couple of super chats to get to. Fingers crossed that Sif Todd will delay the Frontierland ROA permit approval far into 2025, and the board defies Iger by hiring an outsider as CEO, who then pumps the brakes on all proposed park changes. Gets my grits with $10. Go ahead, Lou.
I don't know that it really is CFTOD that's the delay. What it is in previous times, they wouldn't have even thought about it because they had Reedy Creek. It's not SIFTOD that's doing it. It's the environmental board or whatever it's called, the water management thing. But in the past, they knew it existed, but they didn't give a damn because they didn't deal with them. They dealt with SIFTOD, and SIFTOD smoothed the waters, literally, and everything happened. But I just think they were shocked. What do you mean you're going to turn us down? What do you mean we got to come back? We're Disney. We don't have, oh, shit, that's right. Which is why I said that in the long run of things, when Pro and others have estimated that the whole don't say you know what fiasco will cost them, and Legal Mindset has said $1 trillion over the next 10 years. Here's the first few million of that trillion happening. This delay, and whatever they have to spend to modify their request for the permit, and whatever value you put on the negative PR of this situation. But these people, oh boy, they're going to ride to the rescue and stop them from burying the river out. No, they're not. No, they're not. It's going to happen because they want to. Whether that's a good idea or not. Now, as far as hiring an outsider, hell yes, I've been saying that from the beginning. They have to go outside if they want competence with control. But of course, they don't. Bob wants to. I made a song joke. I suggested, because I knew Marvin was doing all these satire songs. I said maybe you need to write one about the tearing out of the river, and Bob Iger sitting on the dock of Willow Bay wasting time. So.
Oh man. Well, look, I will settle for an alteration of the plans, if nothing else. I don't think it's going to, delay it into infinitum. Disney's going to get their way one way or the other. But if we could get maybe an alteration where we keep some of the rivers of America, that would be pretty cool. But we're just going to have to see about that. Definitely a snag.
They don't care.
Well,
and the proof of it is what we said. But the proof of it is what we said earlier, when we noted that they made this big announcement at D23, knowing the next day they were going to make everybody get mad. It isn't that delaying it took any of the sting out of it. It just delayed it a day, so all those people had already gone home who were there to hear it. That's all they cared about, was the immediate effect, because they had to know this idea. Oh, we're shocked to discover everybody is upset over removing one of the basic things that's been there since day one that everybody loves. What a shocker. They know damn well people are going to get mad and complain, but basically their attitude is, yeah, fine. But they do that when we move a tree a foot, right, Josh? So we move. So big deal. Everybody bitches. Everybody complains. We're dealing with these fanatical fan morons, but they keep paying us money and they keep coming back for more. And we're going to do what we think is best. And if you go watch that speech again that you played for us, you find him talking about doing things to set new memories for future generations, which is basically saying, the old memory people are all going to die off anyway. Big deal. Big deal. We're building it for them because, you can't sell a churro to a dead guy. So
that's a good picture.
I know, right? Oh man, I wish I had that.
You should be pointing at that saying, and you're going to win a new car. Da, 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 da. He's in his full Bob Barker mode in that picture.
So
or did
funny.
he just turn a letter?
Oh yeah, well,
maybe. And, we have the mom here with $4.99. Thank you so much. And again, thank you very much, KMG. You've been a great source of info, but also commentary. The mom with $4.99. Okay, I can end this debate here and now. Disney has now become the best used car dealership. So to help to course correct, don't buy the lemons. Yeah, that's it's an interesting statement, right? I would say that, yeah, if you are unhappy with the product, you should definitely not engage with it. And
if you want to use car simile, this is the classic bait and switch. Hey, come on down and we'll sell you a ticket to the park. Special this week for only $140 a day. Does not include all the rides you want to ride on. For that, you're going to have to pay a lot more.
Yeah,
what a ticket to the park used to mean, it does not mean anymore. It means you are entitled to come in and look at it. There's a scene, I think it's Groucho. It's either Groucho or W.C. Fields, where the waiter at the fancy party comes by with a tray full of drinks, and Groucho holds up a dollar bill or something to get him over there. He brings him over, grabs a drink, holds the bill up, and says, "Come back in 20 minutes, I'll give you another look." That's it. That's what they do.
Yeah. The work output has to improve by Disney greatly before I know a lot of people who aren't engaging with the product because it just fell off. That's just how it goes. And when you have Epic Universe coming up right next door, well, that's where the money will ultimately go anyway. But we talked about Josh D'Amaro a bit there, but there's another article that actually goes into Josh D'Amaro to some degree, but also bringing up, well, the park slowdown that we've been noting here, folks. Disney's theme parks have seen a slowdown. Is it a temporary blip? This by Yahoo Finance. You got a little bit of this from the prior show. This time, though, I think, well, we're going to go ahead and put another spin on this. Disney's parks business has historically captured the lion's share of profits for the entertainment giant, bringing in about 36% of the company's overall revenue in its latest quarter. Recent signs of a slowdown have led to concerns the theme parks could be losing their magic. In Disney's latest earnings results, weakness in the parks division dented an otherwise positive report after the company reported a 6% year-over-year drop in domestic operating income and pointed to a, quote, moderation of consumer demand toward the end of the second quarter. That moderation, executives warned, could continue over the next few quarters. This by Hugh Johnston. We certainly see consumers behaving in a way I wouldn't call it recessionary necessarily. They're watching their pennies a little bit more. I would say that they are, and that kind of goes along with what Mum was saying right there, that that people are going to be much more picky with what they actually spend money on. I think, Lou, you had commentary on that as well. So
sure.
I think
it's not pennies. It's not pennies.
It's
hundreds of dollars.
Thousands. I would say thousands of dollars, especially when it comes to Walt Disney.
They're watching hundreds because they haven't got thousands to begin with. Anyway.
No, I would absolutely agree with you. It is a lot of money. We have seen this from multiple industries, but including the amusement industry, that's for sure. And Disney is no exception. They are the most expensive game in town. And I think this is why they are spending as much CapEx as they are in the parks, because I think it was anybody could have seen that the value at Walt Disney World just simply hasn't been as strong as in years past, especially with the decisions that they made in 2020 and onward, nickel and diming consumers, getting rid of Magical Express, getting rid of free Magic Bands. Ron, I'm sure there's a list that you can go by as well. Right? I mean,
there's so many things that they don't have, but honestly, one of the things that they don't have has nothing to do with any of that, and that is the quality of customer service in general. And it comes down to this experience that I had very recently in the Emporium, which is the first shop that you walk into. And by the way, I have a good friend that works in the Emporium. She's fantastic. So there's a lot of good cast members. No, I'm not saying that, but there's some that's you just wonder what are you doing here if you're not, you gotta pretend to at least be happy. So I'm looking at this item and I didn't realize it was a display item and I wasn't sure. So I asked this cast member and I said, is this for sale or is this just display? And she didn't turn around to look at me. She scoffed and she's like, it's display. I'm like, okay. I happened to be live streaming at the time, so it happens to be on. It's recorded. It's out there, and I was like, it took me back because I all of a sudden in my head I went from the Emporium to Walmart instantaneously. I was like, what on earth is this about? So yeah, it was a surprise. And then you have that, and you have.
Did you see her resume when she got hired? She used to work at Walmart. That's why they hired her for retail at Disney.
Yes.
Obviously, those are comparable experiences, right?
Probably some boxes that the person checked on their way in, I would imagine.
Well, that's the thing, Lou. When you talk about going into Walmart, I mean, look, everything's cheap and people aren't getting paid that extraordinary amount. And you go, well, okay, a little bit of I don't know, a weaker customer service is what you can expect. But when you're paying hundreds of dollars per day to actually be in these places like a Disney park, it is stunning when somebody actually gives you the bad service treatment. Ron, I'll tell you what, the Walt Disney World cast members, even as bad as the experience is, they're way nicer than the Disneyland cast members.
I've heard that
another level.
Goen Shogi, who is in our, I think he might be watching right now. I'm not looking at the chat, but he was telling me about a recent experience that he had just recently at Disneyland. And I think he said he doesn't ever plan on going back after this last trip. This was just a couple days ago. So
that's terrible. Absolutely awful. But yeah, I mean, that all of that is going to hurt your prospects of getting consumers back. Not just the lack of investment, not just the lack of upkeep and so forth, and the lack of that Disney difference, but also, you know, cast members and how you are treated when you do pay all that money. Wall Street analysts have debated about whether the slowdown is a temporary blip as consumers deal with high inflation or a sign of a larger trend amid recent price hikes across the parks. Quote, my one area of concern is whether it's a long-term issue as prices have gotten a little bit out of control, yes, versus a shorter-term economically tied type of situation. This by Morningstar analyst Matthew Dolgan said in an interview, I don't know how much of this is a natural cycle thing versus whether they have pushed the envelope a little bit too much on pricing, but that's the biggest thing that concerns me, rather than their investment in the business. I would say they have pushed it as far as probably they can push it. This is why we're getting these wild swings in their price elasticity as of late. But go ahead, Lou.
But we have to remember that the park admission that used to be you bought the coupon book and you got, what was it, like $1.50 admission and so much per ticket, 60 cents, 80 cents. That's not the game anymore. This is now equivalent to a cover charge. Used to be you'd go to Vegas and it was $10 cover and a 2-drink minimum, right? When that person gives you that attitude about, well, it's display, I mean, they haven't thought through and don't care, obviously. And the management hasn't thought through, but I wonder how many customers have thought through.
When you say cover charge, that actually now makes sense why the particular show that's at Epcot on the merry-go-round, it's the exact kind of a show that you would pay a cover charge to go in and see.
And my point is, when you're at the park and you say, hey, I'm thirsty, I'm going to go get a Coke for a couple of bucks.
Sure.
It's a couple bucks, but you paid You paid $150 to walk in the store and be given the permission to buy it. If you start thinking that way, you're going to understand that whether last week the price of this item was, I saw a thing where they had raised all the price. Oh, it was an article about the Pecos Bill food thing. And they said, well, we're changing this item and it's going to be $12.97 instead of $11.95. And I'm going, first of all, my thought was, well, I guess the retheming of all that as Tiana's whatever ain't going to happen. But it isn't the $1.50 they raised the item. It's the fact that you still had to pay that $150 to get in the store and buy it. Suddenly that becomes one hell of an expensive snack.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
And really the equivalent is, I feel like a piece of chocolate. I could get Hershey's for $1.50, or I could get Godiva for $6, or I could get Lindt und Sprüngli imported from Switzerland for $12.95 or whatever. Mm-hmm. The question becomes, is Disney still Lindt und Sprüngli quality better than Hershey? See?
Yeah.
And that's why keeping the little things high quality, in theory, it should be so important to them as a competitive entity, because
Absolutely.
Without that degree of difference, the whole pricing structure falls apart.
And it falls apart even more if you have to rely on year-over-year increases in those prices in order to create the kind of revenue and profit margins that particularly shareholders are expecting. It says right here, Third Bridge analyst Jamie Lumley agreed categorizing these expansions, talking about the $60 billion in investment, as a way for Disney to edge out competitors like Comcast Universal as prices increase and customers pull back spending. Quote, because Disney raises the prices on their parks every single year, they're definitely competing with other, perhaps cheaper uses for people's leisure dollars. He noted building out these bigger, grander, and more immersive experiences is a way to better justify the cost. This is a business that they are betting on, and it can definitely be a needle mover. It can be, and yet it is not right now. And yeah, they've gotten themselves into kind of a trap where they've nickel and dime people to death in terms of pricing out experiences that were previously included, now are separated, and so forth. They've done this thing where They're now charging for a fast pass or Genie Plus or now multi pass Lightning Lane. They've gotten rid of, like I said before, Magical Express, so that incurs more of a cost to that consumer. And just all of these things that have really eroded that value proposition for them. And, well, they're not really viewed as valued in the same way that some of these other brands are, especially Comcast's Universal, especially with the Epic Universe on the way. Meanwhile, and here's the thing, gang. We talked about Josh D'Amaro quite a bit right here, and this article actually makes reference to Josh D'Amaro in a very profounding way. Meanwhile, all eyes remain on current Parks and Experiences chairman Josh D'Amaro, who, as a possible successor to CEO Bob Iger, has a lot at stake in ensuring the vitality of the parks ecosystem. In a presentation at HubSpot's annual Inbound conference in Boston last week, D'Amaro spoke about the magnitude of Disney's theme park investments, emphasizing their place within the overall Disney vision. We are on a relentless pursuit of perfection, he said at the time. Oh, that's very interesting to have said that. Let's see here. It says right here, for that reason, Lumley thinks D'Amaro likely won't be... Oh, I'm sorry. I went ahead of myself here. But the company has been more focused on mitigating losses within its streaming division, with the company reporting its first quarter of streaming profits last month, a significant shift after multiple quarters of bruising losses. And I read that first because we've seen a lot of the capital expenditure money and a lot of the investment money go towards streaming and not towards the parks, which puts them in this current position. Go ahead, Lou. Sorry.
Well, it was a shift, but significant. When you announce, hey, guess what? We finally made a sliver of one of those pennies that good old Hugh was talking about. Yeah. And we are going to tell you right now, we're not going to make it next time or the time after that. Significant shift. Give me a break. This whole implication that whatever they're doing is working and paying off slowly but surely is a lie. And this and I understand why Johnston says I wouldn't want to call it recessionary. Why? Because this is a big bank guy who doesn't want to say that deadly word, because his friends who are big bank guys will say, shh, don't give the game away for another quarter at least. Look, we got the Fed to change the rate. Don't upset the apple cart.
Yep.
But when he talks about people are being a little more careful with their pennies, and we understand, the implication is it's very short term, it's not very significant, and it doesn't mean anything to us because they'll all come back. Really, they will. No.
For that reason, Lumley thinks D'Amaro likely won't be Iger's replacement.
Yeah,
instead, he believes Dana Walden, co-chair of Disney Entertainment, who currently oversees Disney
for
streaming
that
and
reason,
television studios, is probably...
If you asked him, is one of your other reasons that she's a woman and she's buddies with the right side politically? If you asked him that, would that be one of his reasons? Anywhere? Number 10, number 12, number 20?
No, that's got to be top 3. As important as the parks are, whoever is in the CEO seat after Bob Iger, it's really important that they have a deep understanding of how Hollywood works, how talent relations work, and how the content strategy should be.
Wait. It's how Hollywood works is you make a picture for 4 times what you should have and you lose money. How talent relations work is you get into fights with the union and tell them their demands are unrealistic. And how content strategy should be borne out is you take franchises that have made billions of dollars and been successful and gut them.
Yes.
That's what you really have to know to be the CEO of this company.
Wow.
Not how 30% of its profits happen or don't.
It's that phrase, Lou, of how do you make $1 billion? I'm sorry. No, it's how do you make $1 million? Well, you just give a Disney executive $1 billion kind of thing. Right? It's one of those statements. Josh D'Amaro definitely has done a lot of good things when it comes to running the theme park side of the house. But ultimately, there might be some other factors when it comes to looking at who the next CEO would be.
Is implying that the theme started, that carnival business they've got, that's pretty good too. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be Walden there. Ron, your opinion on all of this?
I'm sorry. I'm just looking at these people and I'm going, there's nobody in the bunch I would want. The only person, because I've met him and I know him, although I hate you, hopefully Vash, you'll know the name, the president of Disneyland right now.
Oh yes,
I mean,
yes, Pot Rock.
But yeah, Ken. I couldn't think of his name. Anyway, I met Ken because when I worked for Disney, I first worked for Disney Vacation Club. Um, Super nice guy. Seems to really know what the heck he's doing. I have no idea. I guess he's not a Hollywood guy, but he's in Hollywood right now. He's in Disney land,
Sure.
not world. And his name never comes up for this position. I don't know what else he would take.
See, but here's
I was just
the
going to say the only
problem.
faith that I have is if this company gets sold to somebody else right now. Honestly,
It's not going to
that's a
happen.
fair
Who would
point.
buy it? Would you
I know.
buy it?
Oh,
I wouldn't buy it
Point
if
two.
I had all the
I
money
know.
in the world.
I know.
That's it's funny. I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Okay. I have a relative. That's how I'll kill it. A relative, a close relative, who was unlucky in love for most of his life, and finally found somebody that he apparently loves, and we liked her. We didn't expect to like her because everybody else that he had ever been involved with, we thought, oh, this isn't going to work. And sure enough, it didn't, right? And so when I was thinking about how much I liked her, I thought, I like her, but there's only one thing about her that worries me. Why does she like him?
Hey, I think that about my wife all the time.
But my point is, the reason I mention that is when you talk about a Hollywood person, the issue of getting somebody from inside the biz is an issue of we're one of the major studios. We got to have somebody who has as much reputational clout as our company deserves. The problem is the people you have now that are doing those jobs that have that you've been trusting are taking you to the cleaners, So it's like, who do you want to be? Fit to sit with the other kings of the universe or somebody who actually makes us money? So, look,
that's it.
Movies have some distinct differences from other products out there, marketing and production wise. The biggest one, which most people never think about, that was taught to me many, many, many years ago by a guy named Art Murphy, who was the business side guy at Daily Variety, the dean of business. Mm-hmm. He said, if you make a movie for 100 million or 500 million or 50 million, it still costs X at the box office on Friday night. In other words, unlike every other product that you're surrounded by, zero effect on the cost of sale is in the cost of production. That's huge. That's huge. I keep citing this, but it's true. When Star Wars happened and Fox had the distribution, remember, they didn't pay for it entirely and they didn't own it. They still don't. But when Star Wars, the year that it came out, 20th Century Fox went profit from that movie alone. In other words, just their part of the Star Wars revenue from the first year paid the house nut at 20th Century Fox. That means every time somebody bought a chicken salad in the commissary, it was pure profit. Think about that. Think about that. And you know what they did with the money? They bought Pebble Beach Golf Course. They bought a Coca-Cola bottler or Pepsi, I forget which. They bought all of these non-movie oriented businesses. Why? Because they wanted to seem more legitimate to all the Wall Street people, none of whom trust movie companies because they know the kind of accounting chicanery that goes on at movie companies. They never, ever trusted them. So the impact of getting it right on the movie side of the house can't be described, can't be equal. So you need somebody who can make that happen. And when you have somebody who has proven that they can't, rather flamboyantly, aggressively making these movies for 4 and 5 and 6 and God knows how many $100 million that have to sell a ticket to every person on the planet to get halfway to break even. And that's who you want to put in charge of everything else, second guessing the guy that's running the parks, second guessing the guy that's running the sports. Whether you think they're being well run or poorly run, I see no credentials here. The woman we talked about who used to work at Walmart, and that's how she got the job in retail at Disney World, has more claim to her job than Dana Walden has to running the company, except being in the right place at the right time with the right gender and the right friends, which is enough to get the job in our world, but it's not enough to even slightly guarantee she'll do it well. So,
well, let's get into our last story here, which talks about the movie division and how well it is or is not doing here. Got to go into this article from Forbes. Caroline Reed, he's doing some great work there. Disney's Little Mermaid plunges to $5 million loss. And as Pro and some other people have brought up, well, that's a lot more than maybe Disney's total investment in this film, but we'll get into all that in just a moment. I also want to bring up what we think this film might have lost, and also, too, what studio is actually doing well within Disney right now. Disney's live-action version of The Little Mermaid lost an estimated $4.9 million at the box office last year, according to an analysis of recently released filings, which reveal that the movie's, quote, cost exceeded the production budget as spending surged to $355.1 million, or 270 euros as well there. The movie is a remake of Disney's beloved 1989 cartoon. We know all that. The latest filings cover the year to August 31st, 2023, which is 3 months after the movie was released, and long after filming had wrapped in July 2021. The year before release is when the intensive work on visual effects is usually done. The financial statements show that $35.4 million was spent on the movie during this period. It didn't pay off, as The Little Mermaid was widely criticized for the eerie appearance of these creatures, which inhabit its undersea world. I would say that's an appropriate description right
Under
there.
the sea. Darling, it's better. If your hair is redder, take it from me.
Yeah.
I tell you. Now,
Good
right
stuff.
away, this person doesn't know how things work.
Sure, we'll go. Well,
And let me explain you why.
Go ahead.
The idea that you shoot the whole thing, you're all done, you're finished, and now for the next year is when you do the effects. If that's the way you did it wrong. If you didn't start by planning every single shot in the effects and storyboarding it and figuring out what you needed as components when you were shooting live to put it together, and if you weren't putting them together as you shot the movie, you're making it take longer for one thing, and you're making it more expensive for another, and you're making it less likely to be cohesive and interesting and fun. Because if it took you the whole year and a half that you spent shooting the movie or whatever to finally say, oh, wait a minute, she's too blue, it's too late, except with a lot of extra money.
So you're saying that what we would consider post-production normally is kind of a production process
on a heavy effects film. Post-production begins in pre-production.
Yeah, okay.
Is what I'm saying.
Yep.
I
totally get you.
Or should.
And I would agree with that. I would agree with that assessment. And if it's all taking place during post,
look at this.
Ooh,
he interviewed 1,235 film professionals and concluded from that, according to the studios, theaters keep 49% of it. Well, on average. That doesn't mean it does. He's going to prove to you that his percentage is right. It's not.
Yeah,
let me tell you, guys. No, because look, this film dropped dead pretty quickly, as I remember, right?
Right.
Couple 3 weeks in first run, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, suddenly that skews that number, and the reason it does is the way these deals are structured is that the studio gets a much bigger piece of the first week or two or three, and then it changes as the time goes on. The longer it runs, the more the theaters get. So everybody's assuming 50-50 on what, a 16-week run or something. But if it only makes 4, suddenly that percentage is off, way off. And there's less excuse to lose money in the sense that, all right, you're not getting the value of the long run, but you're getting a bigger piece of the action up front from everybody you talked into going and wish you had talked into going on the proviso they wouldn't tell their friends how lousy it is. They wouldn't come. Right. So these generalizations, it's one thing to use a general number, okay? But it's another thing to say we proved it because we polled 1,235 people who don't know what they're talking about. So anyway.
And it changes by market as well. Like, for example, China, because of the 2012 agreement, they only get 25% back from the China box office right there. That is the studios. That is so it
by the
fluctuates
way,
wildly.
By the way,
Yeah.
when everything is owned by the government, how honest do you think those guys taking tickets at the Shanghai multiplex are?
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Okay. No, seriously, because if you don't know the kind of chicanery that used to go on one of the greatest things that ever happened to making theaters honest was the conversion to digital projection. And the reason is, you might think a digital projector at your local theater is like a bright light and a hard drive. And every night at 7 o'clock for the 7 o'clock show, the guy pushes the button and the hard drive unloads into the right place to put this movie on the screen. No. The theater projector literally talks back to the distributor by satellite. And the distributor knows that that particular theater is about a week and a half behind in what they're supposed to have been paid. And it won't unlock every single performance. It has to be unlocked by how good they've been about reporting the money and paying it. Because they used to, in the old days before any of this, they used to get reports from 4th of July weekend that said theater had leaky roof, closed due to rain.
What?
Yeah. Oops, sorry, we didn't have any money for you that week. And unless the studio could send somebody out to every single theater in Christendom, how could they prove otherwise? And companies that were in trouble would delay. You pay the urgent bills first, and the other bills not so first. All of that stuff happens. Wow. So if you think it doesn't happen here, what do you suppose happens in China?
No, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you, Lou.
So all I'm saying is, all of this speculation, just know that it had to cost more than what they told you it cost. Never less, always more. And they had to get back less than they said they got. Never more, ever more. So,
that's.
So this,
I was
frankly, I'd heard about this, that somebody had done a new accounting on this movie, but I hadn't paid a lot of attention to it because of my jaundiced eye. But when I see the headline is a whole $5 million it lost, what the heck was that? That was craft service.
Well, and here's the thing, Lou. You see, I absolutely agree with you. There's definitely chicanery on the back end here, and whatever profits that you can possibly surmise, doesn't nearly take that much into account. This is why I've always scaled on the low end when it comes to the studio returns rather than the high end, because it's just, there are a lot of issues and machinations at play. However, what's very interesting about this, Lou, is that they also say, let me just see here, right here, the financial statements, which by the way have been delivered via because they've done some filming in Europe. There are some money that they can get back from having invested there, but they have to be very clear about the financials publicly. This is why we were getting this information. But these financial statements also do not show the marketing costs of the movie. So if the home entertainment and merchandise sales should be added onto the theater takings, the marketing costs should also be deducted from them. You see, that's the thing. That overall investment there, it's not just the movie, but it's also M&A or marketing and advertising. And that's why
150 million in marketing.
I would think
I would
so.
guesstimate
Yeah, I think I had
around
125 conservatively in my estimates, and me just doing some basic math, making some generalizations. Obviously, Lou, I had it losing well over $100 million because those M&A costs are so high.
How much do you think it lost in merchandise from that version of Ariel not selling? When I go to Hollywood Studios, it's so pathetic. I actually think she's still there, maybe, but the last time I went, that version of Ariel is still meeting in Hollywood Studios and never has a line. How would you like to be that actress that has to play that role in the park and like you don't even have anybody to go to your meet and greet? I mean, it's sad. And none of that had to happen. If they really wanted to do this, just create a different mermaid. Different name, different backstory. You could even title it The Little Mermaid, but this time it's not about Ariel. It's about this other girl.
The Little Mermaid's sister, the Little Mermaid's cousin, the new Little Mermaid, the littlest mermaid of all. I mean, there's plenty of ways to go when you're, but no.
Oh man, we know it lost a significant amount, and that Disney's idea that we're going to relaunch this thing, but put a brand new spin and flavor on it, it just did not work out at all. I mean, and that's
actually, wait a minute. Taking out the whole racial, ethnic wokeness,
right?
Isn't saying we got to do something new because everybody's seen the old one. You don't want to have that stalker prince and all those old 1930s ideas. It's the flip side of the same argument, and it never works. It never works.
No.
Yeah, and even if removing, like Lou said, even removing the racial component from it, and which I was definitely attempting to do because this film had larger issues at stake that really tanked it than just the casting. But the casting though does kind of preclude a lot of.
I just realized what we keep saying. The Little Mermaid went in the tank.
Well, I was trying to make the connection.
But fishing the ball is lucky the infant once a state.
Yes.
But that's the thing. So a lot of the merchandise that you sell from this thing and how you market it and advertise it and try to capitalize on it afterwards, there really is a short life because it is so far removed from that.
They should have given people a coupon for Cheddar Bay biscuits.
That's great stuff.
Yummy. That would be good marketing.
Yeah, well. It would be. With that, let's go ahead and wrap up the show here, folks. Go and show with $4.99. Didn't Disney sell used light bulbs once? Yes, they did during the closing.
I have some from the electrical parade. Yeah.
When it glowed away forever. I wonder
until next time.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder if they'll jar the Rivers of America. It's going to taste better than the blue milk.
Wait a minute. Yeah. That's the exact opposite to what we said about announcing a 3P in the first movie. It's saying it'll never be here again until we decide to put it back together and change the bulbs and sell them to you for $12.
boy. Disney used to do that a lot more too.
And all of this stuff from the very first one, when Valiant, was doing his original exposés about these British subsidy rules. That's all below the line.
Yeah.
The director, the producer, the writers, the staff, the studio people are all getting paid in Burbank, not in London. And so.
Really?
Oh, sure.
That's a good point.
Because you have to remember the motivation for all of these subsidies, whether they're by countries like England or by states, is to get more local work. That's the state's justification for foregoing the money and giving it to generating more of an income and more of a steady industry in their location. So if the fact that somebody came and made their movie in New Orleans is not going to make them suddenly hire somebody who pays income taxes in Louisiana. They're all still wherever they are. So it's anyway.
I never.
By the way, just as similar studies have been done to show that government subsidies for things like sports arenas and stadiums do not pay off. Not one of these, at least in this country, for all the various states that have done them, has ever brought more business home to that state than it cost them in putting this money out and administering the program. So it's socialism 101. Enjoy.
It's a profound point. I never really put it together like that, but
by the way, the fact that England gets so much of this is why. Because England has sound stages and special effects houses and dolly rental companies set up and ready to service the industry.
Sure.
I can't think of the movie now, but it was one of the West African countries. And they made a deal where they allowed a certain movie to come in and shoot there and gave them subsidies and all that. But part of the deal was that when they brought all their cameras and lights and everything, they wouldn't take them home again. So that country could then use them over and over again and rent them out to other people that wanted to make a movie there.
Was it Wakanda?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh,
we have
man.
Adamantium C-stands. Lower maintenance costs.
There's the show. But thank you, Coach Yogi, with the $4.99. The Mom with $4.99. My local theme park, Holiday World, average ticket price is $35 when it comes, and it comes with a water park. Yep, that's right. I spent $200 for a day trip for 4 people. It is crazy how much value.
And how much is the Coke and hamburger and fries compared to?
That's always going to be higher. But
no, I'm saying I don't think it is. I just because
it's in the UK, but they taste better.
Well, yeah, but if you're a park that's largely about local audiences and is small like that, everybody knows where all the best places are to go for burgers right outside the gate when they get done for the day.
That's true.
That's a fair point.
A park where everybody knows your name. And you know.
I know.
Cheers.
I know Jonas just recently went to Holiday World for the first time recently, and he was blown away by that park. And
where's this? Which Holiday World?
Holiday World is. Let me just see here.
Because there got to be some little ones around with that kind of name. So I don't know.
I want to say it is Holiday World. Oh man, why can't I pull up the address?
Anyway,
give me a
not
second.
important.
Indiana.
Of course.
Do apologize. Yeah. And it's I've heard great things about it. Also, too, here's the thing about that. It's what was it? It has the Voyage, the famous wooden roller coaster there that I heard is one of the best wooden roller coasters in the world. So when Jonas was telling me that he was going to go across country in order to see this whole, Holiday World and go on some of these attractions, I was like, you got to tell me everything about it. And we had a long conversation about how he enjoyed his experience after that. We want to get it on that park place in some form, but we had to find the right venue for it. Yeah, I mean, there's great value out there, and that's why some of these amusement park proprietors are doing relatively pretty well, at least during this economic climate. But
because
I want to go ahead.
Know not to build a $400 million roller coaster over a period of 4 years. It's only going to return them $100 million roller coasters revenue over 10.
Yes, that is
really. I know it's funny, but it's the same.
No, you're right.
It's the same principle.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely. Very cool. Very cool. Well, I want to go ahead and thank our panelists for joining us today. Ron, I know you've got a bunch of stuff over there on Follow the Bradleys Fun. Where can people find you besides the YouTube channel? And what do you have going on the YouTube channel so people can go over there and subscribe?
So, every morning we do the Daily Dish. We talk about what's going on, the latest in the theme parks, or just some other fun subject that works. I will not veer away from the most important. If a very important news item comes up that needs to be dealt with, I'll deal with that as well. But typically, it's going to be on theme parks, pop culture, perhaps. We're also reviewing The Penguin, which I saw. The first episode was, in my personal, opinion, was excellent. And it was nice because I had to watch Agatha the night before, and then I watched The Penguin, and I'm like, okay, this is much better. So
this is called the agony and the ecstasy.
I know it's the opposites, but it's funny. I finished something today that we're talking about all of this, and I know it's very a negative, but I want to put it on the channel. I finished finally editing my point of view video for Tiana's Bayou Adventure at night. So that is going to be on the channel at 7:00. It's premiering. It's going to be it's the full queue as well as the ride at night, just so that people can see what it's like. Because for this ride, if you ignore any storyline or anything else, Splash Mountain, pretend that didn't exist, but you still have the Splash Mountain. It is still the ride of Splash Mountain, right? It is a better ride experience at night, which, by the way, isn't very often here in Orlando because you have to wait until the fireworks are going off to get on it at night. But so for 1 hour of operating time during the day, it's a halfway decent experience. Anyway, that's going up there, and I might be on with Lorena tonight as well on the Spice Lounge. So.
When is the Spice Lounge, by the way?
I think 7:30 tonight.
Okay. Normally, I was going to say it's like 6:00 or something when I've been on it. But anyway, the Spice Lounge.
And
So
then follow the
good,
Bradley's
so
Fun
good.
on X or on Facebook, on Instagram. If you just type it in, you'll find me there.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you so much for joining me, Ron. I always love your presence on the show. So that was a whole lot of fun.
Thank you
but
for the invite.
No problem at all. But you're not the only one doing content around here in this beautiful World Wide Web. Lou, what are you doing in your neck of the woods? I know you're covering Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you here, but I know you've got the genre guys over there on the project.
Yeah, tonight we're going for a golden oldie, or not tonight, this Saturday night is when we shoot them. We're going for a classic movie that I'm sure all of you have seen, and I'm sure none of you understand quite what a big hit it was. It will blow your mind. It stars Errol Flynn, it stars Basil Rathbone, and it's about they're watching their pennies. It's about robbing from the rich and giving to the poor. It's the original, the classic Michael Curtiz, Warner Brothers Adventures of Robin Hood with
Fantastic.
also. And we're going to have fun with that. And just to show you the eclecticness of the genre guys, somehow the next one on our schedule for next week, a week from Saturday, is Police Academy. How's that for a transition from one kind of movie to the other? I don't do the scheduling. I just sit back and let my fearless compatriots, angry
those two movies.
Yes.
Can I quickly give my favorite line from any Robin Hood movie ever?
Okay.
This one happens to be from Robin Hood, Men in Tights. My favorite line is, "What makes you so sure you can do it?" Because unlike other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent. that was my favorite line.
Of course, Errol Flynn was Australian, so there was that. And the one that just came up here. This is a movie a lot of people, it surprises me, have not seen.
Yeah.
And it's 2010, the sequel, if you will, to 2001, with Roy Scheider and Helen Mirren and John Lithgow, and directed by the wonderful Peter Hyams, who in science fiction as well as other things has, to his credit, Capricorn 1 and what the heck's the thing with Connery as the sheriff? Anyway, this man, believe it or not, because I met him at a thing at SC a million years ago, he paints his storyboards in oil paint.
That's wild.
He's an accomplished artist. Not every frame, but the masters, the setups, because that's how he is. So although this is not obviously Kubrick and his creativity, as a storytelling piece, it's better. It's way better. And especially because, when you watch the movie, or if you don't, even if you listen to our stuff, but you should, Roy Scheider, of all the things he did so well, he is the best guy out there at walking into a crazy situation and on behalf of you as the audience asking, what the heck is this about? What's going on here? He's the everyman in the middle of something beyond belief who brings humanity and order and answers to the questions better than anybody. And this movie may be better than any other movie that he's done. So there's that. And as I'm sure Vash can explain, and I can, the way these things work is that we do them one a week for the Pro Channel as perks for members. So any of you who have been on some of these Pro Channel shows lately where somebody's generously bought 50 and 100 memberships, you probably have the right to go see all of these right now and didn't even know it. And I always stress that because occasionally we will have somebody say, what? I'm a member? When did I become a member? And they don't realize they got it in one of these giftings. And that's important because when that free 30 days of that free membership show up at the end, the next thing you know about is YouTube bugging you saying, hey, why don't you re-up? Give us some money. And it's not us dinging you for cash to renew your membership. It's the system, okay? But anyway, you can watch all of those when they go up every week. And then 90 days later, they show up here for freebies. You don't even have to be a member. Because we can't do those yet, right? Or we're getting there.
So after 90 days of it being on the Pro Network, it comes over as content that everybody can enjoy here on the on that pod place or T3PO.
And
I was studying there a little bit because I don't know if you saw this, Lou, but we have a viewer of the channel that I didn't. I'm kind of stunned that they're viewing the channel and your genre guys specifically.
Yes, you sent me a note about it, and I was shame on me for touting myself this way, but none other than rather famous cineast Mr. Burnett likes us. He really likes us.
So, he likes us. That's pretty cool right there. So
he likes
people really do love the genre, guys. I mean, even established filmmakers and so forth, people in the industry, they really like what you guys have to say. And I know you guys at home will enjoy the genre, guys, as it's released on T3PO or when it's released members only for the Pro show. If you want to get a jump start on that, absolutely. And also, too, we have Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern right there. By the way, I know there are some scheduling changes with a lot of your favorite shows as part of That Park Place Network. Don't worry, guys. Hollywood Backlot with Lou and you is staying on Sunday at that time slot. So that's good to know. But our Fox show, Lou, I thought was astounding and was really great.
Of course, those of you who know that building. The Nakatomi Plaza, aka the Fox Plaza, which is on the Fox lot and which is up the hill from my old house, and which I watched them pseudo blow it up, making Die Hard from my backyard. So that was kind of fun. And then one of those nights, it was about 4 nights they shot up there, and I walked on up to the main drag there in Century City and saw Robert Davi and the other guy, running the armored car up the way. And anyway, we did a little tour of the west side of LA and particularly of the Fox lot and the things near it on the show last time. And that's one thing, just because it is the Hollywood backlot, we go everywhere on that show. We really do wonder. And people seem to like it, so we do that.
I think people love the show. I think, and look, as long as it, has some type of association with Hollywood in some way, which a lot of the stuff that we do cover does. I think it's fair game. And like I said before, people love the journey. But I thought our Fox one was just awesome. There's so many great stories, especially from Lou and his childhood and growing up in the general area there. I thought that was really, really cool. So I think you guys will get a kick out of that. But because
that building and all those skyscrapers that are there now in Century City all happened because Fox made Cleopatra and lost their butt and had to sell the land. And all of that used to be Arabian villages and European streets. And if you ever watch shows like, for example, in those days, Combat was a Fox show. And that was everywhere from Normandy to Berlin on that back lot, okay? So many of the great TV shows of the 60s were able to be international because they happened to be located on lots that had all that. I know they couldn't have made The Man from U.N.C.L.E. with all of those international locations without saying, well, we go out there on lot 3 and there it is, So anyhow.
Absolutely.
All right. It's late.
All right.
Let's go home.
No, you're good. You're good. Well, thank you so much for watching us here and spending your time with us here on That Pod Place or T3PO Live. Very much appreciated. If you haven't yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button right there. We produce all kinds of great content just like this on basically a daily basis. So please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, please like this video. And thank you so much for sticking around here on the T3PO and That Pod Place Live. We will go ahead and see you next week. I know there is a scheduling change coming, but for now, we are right here. And I like that quite a bit. And that's the music to sign us off, so we will see you guys later. Thank you.